Hi, Sheriff.
Well, good afternoon. Walton County Sheriff Mike Adkinson, along with our trusty public information team, Ms. Corey DeBridney and Lindsay Darby, and this is the Sheriff Live, as many of our regular viewers know. We'll start with the basic, ladies, which is Walton County, Florida. That is halfway between Pensacola and Tallahassee. If you don't know where we're at, we run from the Alabama line to the Gulf of Mexico. And this is where I report to my bosses, the citizens of Walton County, about what's going on. We do this. We try to do this twice a month. What we say is we'll answer any questions you have. Don't guarantee that I got a right answer. We guarantee we'll get you an answer. And we'll either deal with, local, national, whatever you want to talk about. We're more than happy to do that. We try and get you some information. And a lot of times, Corey, we have to follow up. We have to go look some stuff up and send it back to you. But we want to try and make it a usable situation, usable information. So if you have questions, join us. If you are, and obviously just fire the questions in. As I said, I don't see the questions, so Corey reads them as they come to us. But keep in mind, somebody may have already asked the question you're asking. You might want to look if it's a pretty popular question, but we'll try to circle back. And always when we get off, people say, well, you didn't read my question. Well, sometimes they're posted after we're off, so make sure we're still live and we're going. So with that, it has been exceedingly busy here in Walton County,
yes, very
Florida,
busy.
which is, it pays the bills, but it can be a little bit frustrating too. And we've had so much going on. Let me jump on a couple of things, Corey, and then
Sure.
we'll talk about, and obviously any questions you guys have, we'll try and answer. Over the 4th of July weekend, we're dealing with massive crowds. I think July 4th night, I think we were talking somewhere in the neighborhood of 700 individual calls. In other words, there may have been 2 deputies on it, 3 deputies on it, but individual 700 calls. That is unbelievable. Do some quick math over 24 hours on that, and you'll know what we're talking about. And we had multiple crowds of 1,000 people up and down the beach, which we expect that because it's July 4th. It's the busiest day of the year. For those of you guys that live in Walton County, you want to know what like for instance, the population on a day like that. We actually did a study or commissioned a study, probably 8-9 months ago, to give us some idea how many people were here during these peak times. It's about 300,000 people were in Walton County that night. So a lot of people. And we had some issues. We had some problems. We had a couple of things going on. One, we had issues down at the Dogwood Beach Access, which we just had this massive crowd down there. The interesting thing about it, the crowd in and of itself is not the problem. As always the case, there's individuals who cause problems. And we had two individuals actually be beaten up or attacked, for lack of a better way of putting it, got into a fight in a crowd, which is always a dangerous situation. And, we can't have that happen. At the end of the day, that can't be allowed to happen. And so we're going to try and take some more decisive action and maybe make some changes. I had a good meeting with the Board of County Commissioners Tuesday. I brought this up. And then yesterday I actually met with Commissioner Donna Johns here in Miramar, and we talked a little bit about what some things we can do and where the board and the sheriff's office can work together to make this better. But we got to do some things differently, and we've got to get some people out there to stay on top of it. And we've taken some of those actions now, but I will tell you, and I don't want to mislead anyone, there are going to continue to be large crowds in Walton County. Absolutely going to be large crowds in Walton County through Labor Day. And I kind of feel like even after Labor Day now, we've gotten to where we're busy year round, I think, But the big crowds like that that is holiday event driven largely, from that standpoint. So. Yeah. And unfortunately, the same night we had a murder, which is in Defuniak Springs. So those are not things that that's a little difficult to plan for. The resources helping out the city of Defuniak, that's their case. They're working it, but we ended up helping make an arrest down there. So we had to send staff down there to work a murder, which takes priority on some other things. Interesting, we've continued to have problems with. Trying to think of the right word here. How about little heathens that are showing out that are causing us problems? In fact, we arrested a guy last night. Have we released this yet, Corey?
No, we are going to release it. I wanted you to be able to break it, but we arrested him this morning. It was an incident last night.
Yeah, in Rosemary Beach last night with an aggravated battery, and he cut a guy with a knife. And we've got to listen. Most of it's on video. We've got most of it.
17 years old.
17 years old. And here's what's crazy. Not only does he cut this guy, and luckily it ended up being a minor injury, we're thankful for that. But, we're not used to having to chase people around Rosemary Beach for aggravated battery with a deadly weapon. Mm-hmm. Here's what's crazy. We arrested this same kid a year ago in Rosemary Beach for fighting with a deputy, being involved in an altercation with a deputy. So he didn't get the lesson last time, and now he's facing this second term. And, it's just unbelievable to me that we're having to do this and deal with him again. But we got to deal with those people in a stern manner, and that's our intention to go forward.
And I'll put that press release out tonight once we get off air.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
So what else, Corey? We want to talk?
Well,
questions?
speaking of arrests, I do want to hit on the Mac Bayou vehicle burglaries. Sure. We had originally, put a couple videos out of this individual breaking into cars and or trying to pull on door handles, things like that, in June and early July. Right. They caught him. Our investigators caught him earlier this week. Yeah,
and so that, in that whole area that was around the Driftwood, Mac Bayou area, and we had been getting hit over there pretty regularly. I have to tell you, we actually thought it was somebody that lived in the area to start with, that was kind of our thought process, just because of the time frame and everything going on. We had people working plain clothes. We had people working undercover for the last few weeks. Bicycles, people kind of hidden out there, and so paid off. We ended up getting a tip, and our patrol folks, our district lieutenant, had put in this extra plan to help catch him, and we ran him with a dog a little bit, and lo and behold, we ended up getting some information and making an arrest there. So it's a really good case. I don't know how many burglaries this guy's going to be good for, but it's a bunch.
Mm-hmm. And he wears the same clothing in all the videos.
Yeah, he's not. Listen, he's not a genius, but interesting from Fort Walton Beach. So we're seeing the same pattern of people coming to us from surrounding counties and victimizing our residents. So listen, we had some really good luck with our cameras on that deal too. It's paying dividends. It's actually paying dividends.
Yeah.
That's a good arrest. Good work by those guys.
Yes. Yeah. And we just continue to encourage people, please lock your cars and just take our valuables out, because what his MO was pulling on door handles. He wasn't smashing windows.
And by the way, he got thousands of dollars. Yeah. Thousands of dollars left in vehicles, and a gun left in the car. And so I get, there's a catch when people say, well, I shouldn't have to. I agree. I understand that. But that's just the world. I wish you didn't have to, but it's the world we're in, and we're always surprised how many people leave their doors open. And they go, well, I left my doors open. I love to leave my doors open. I'm like, probably not the best call in today's world. I mean, I hate to say it like that. And Walton County is a very safe place, but you got to help me help you, Yeah,
sure. Just to catch up on some comments.
Sure.
Deborah Lee McCormick says hello. Beth Niblett, she works over at our jail. She says hello.
Awesome.
Alicia says, hi, friends. Tiffany Hall. Hey, Sheriff, I just had a quick question for you. First, how are you today? And do we know if we're going to be getting a red light in front of the new Chick-fil-A on 331? It's extremely busy, and we've had already a couple of close calls and wrecks.
Listen, I have to agree with you. First of all, I think we've never seen a chicken sandwich in Walton County, right? Wow.
Not a good one anyway.
So I'm old enough to remember, I'm from here, I'm old enough to remember when they opened the Hardee's, which was the first fast food restaurant in this county down there, I think it's about where Whataburger is now. You would think they had never seen a hamburger back then, but yeah, it's very dangerous. What she's talking about is when people are trying to pull out of there, it's really a problem. So I had a chance to talk to the city manager today. I didn't bring that up, but I will. I agree with you. I think there needs to be a light there. We're waiting on a couple lights, right? The one at 331,
correct.
Old Business in 331.
Correct.
We're waiting on that light for sure.
And I know a lot of people have been asking about Rock Hill too.
Rock Hill desperately needs one, and I'll tell you where there's another one that they're telling us no, but man, I think they need to rethink it. Is right down from Church Street on 98. The problem is you have a light at 393, which I appreciate, but if you watch people, I had a lady run me off the road the other day at Church Street trying to get out, and I stopped her, and she, the bad decision on her part, but you can see the frustration she had gotten trying to get out of there. But
yeah.
So, hopefully there's a couple things we can do to eliminate that. But back to her central question, I will ask that. I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah, and just I think that it's wise if you consider going out of Chick-fil-A and taking that back road to get to the light.
It is. And it's a little more. It's frustrating. It's a little bit
sure
longer,
it's frustrating,
but it is definitely
safer.
It's definitely
100%. Yeah. Rita Mills, what is the law regarding golf carts crossing US 98?
So, golf carts are different than low-speed vehicles, and I'm not being persnickety, but it's important to understand the difference. Golf carts are big green X no. You can cross if you have a low-speed vehicle and you're just crossing there, okay? So
if the road is 35 miles an hour or less.
On either side.
Correct.
On either side, correct. The road has to be accessible to golf carts on both sides of the road, but they can cross it at a four-way stop. Yeah.
Got to be accessible to low-speed vehicles.
Got to be accessible to low-speed vehicles. Low-speed vehicles and heathen children are the bane of my existence these days, So, yeah, the low-speed vehicles, actually the county had a meeting on them today, and they were talking about some of the steps they can take. Because I think it's a little bit of a catch-22, because even on 30A, where the traffic is so heavy, right, it's easy for us to deal with the people that get on 98. You're just stupid. I mean, that is just close to Darwinism, getting on. Corey's making that face. I should have said that. But you should not get on 98 with your family in a low-speed vehicle or golf cart. And if you do that, I'm not sure that you're smart enough for me to be able to help you. I don't know that information is going to help you because you clearly don't get it. 30A and Scenic 98, or 38 specifically, even if it's perfectly legal, frustrates people to no end. Yeah. It frustrates people no end.
Just the etiquette of it.
Yeah, I mean, they're going 15 miles an hour, and there's 35 vehicles, so people don't even like the look of that are here. But it is a catch-22 because there's people that love their low-speed vehicles and they're compliant with the law. And so a lot of times, people, hey, I saw this and that, but they're not really illegal. It's just you don't like it. And those are two separate things, right?
Now the babies in laps.
The babies in laps and all that is absolutely, Yeah. The other interesting thing is the county is doing something different. And again, I was talking to Commissioner Johns about this yesterday. They're going to put some pull-offs. And I think 6 or 8 places for a low-speed vehicle to get off the roadway to allow traffic to get past. That's great. I hope they use it. They're not required by law to use it, but boy, I sure hope they would. The county can decide whether or not they even want low-speed vehicles. That's on a county road, they can make that decision. But we're just kind of waiting to see what they decide. We had some folks at a meeting today, and we believe in being pro-enforcement on those things, but I can't cause a traffic accident trying to run somebody down. That's the other thing. So, if a low-speed vehicle gets past a deputy, we can't run everybody off the road and pedestrians to try and run them down. So it gets a little more, you have to be conscious of everybody's safety when you're doing this.
Right. And they have been very proactive.
That was a long-winded answer. Did I answer the question fully?
Yes, you did.
All right.
You did.
Sure.
She was just asking if they could cross 98. So
the short answer, I could have just said yes and been done, but I was trying to give you the whole
yes, if both sides of the road are 35 miles an hour or less and are LSV, approved. So Heather Maxey, how does the county lines work when your address is one county, but the property is on a different county?
Yeah.
Whose jurisdiction would it fall under?
Whatever the physical address is whose jurisdiction it falls. So like a lot of addresses in Rosemary Beach for many years said Panama City Beach. A large number of addresses in Miramar said Destin. If you're in Ponce de Leon, if you're in Red Bay area, a lot of those had Ponce de Leon addresses.
And so even Mossy had a couple of them.
Even Mossy had, yeah. So the short answer is, if you call us, we know where that located. We know where the property's at. Even if it says Ponce de Leon, if it says Panama City, we know whether or not that address is in Walton County. So don't worry about that. It's the physical address you're located in.
And I would venture to guess, though, in speaking of terms of an emergency, that if you needed somebody there fast, it's going to be who's ever closest. I don't think the counties are going to be like, hey, that's yours.
And kind of an interesting thing, Sheriff Aiden, who's in Okaloosa County, Sheriff Ford in Bay County, and Sheriff Tate in Holmes, we all have a standing agreement. If somebody's close by and they need somebody, we're going to do it. Now, we may not go over and handle your dog and your barking dog call, but if you have an emergency and somebody's close, we're going to try and get the closest unit to you. We answer calls for Holmes County, and conversely, when somebody's there, I mean, Bunker, which is in the eastern edge of Walton County, and but you have to go into Bay County to get there. Certainly Bay County Sheriff's Office has helped us out there before on numerous occasions. So there's good partnership.
Yolanda Decker says, good evening. I want to praise WCSO and all the other agencies for all the work they did in the investigating Stephen Gay case. He was served 30 years and will never hurt my grandbabies again. Thank you so much. We actually put that out last week.
Right.
We appreciate you, Yolanda. Jerome said, hello from Alpena, Michigan.
Very
just
nice.
committed to 3 months in your fine county as a snowbird.
Well, sir, what we'd like you to do is
obey the beach
liberally.
Flags.
We always say, spend deliberately, think conservatively, right?
Yes.
That's my motto.
Yes.
Bring your credit cards. We like that.
Yes.
So, we like our snowbirds.
Yeah. Chaz Galloway said, in regards to the Dogwood Beach access situation, what are the options to get this under control? What can the surrounding residents do to help?
So I think there's a couple of things. I mean, you got to remember one is Dogwood right now. Last night there was nobody at Dogwood. There wasn't the last
we had
2
3
nights.
patrol cars.
Yeah, there was nobody there, but everybody was at Rosemary Beach. So we're chasing folks. Commissioner Johns and I had this discussion, which I like. I'm in favor of some cameras. I think she and I we're gonna look at that, and I think there's some options there. And the other thing, and I told the board this Tuesday night, is we're gonna pass an ordinance that will give us kind of blanket carte blanche to restrict movement on county beach accesses during times of high flow. In other words, if we see it becoming a problem, and you don't live there, we're not going to let you down on the beach at night, for instance. That's an example. We'll let you off the beach, but we're just not going to let people come on the beach if that ordinance is approved. That's probably a good way to control the flow. So I think it's not one answer. I think it's multiple, right? I think it's controlling the flow of the beach accesses with that ordinance. I think some cameras can play along. And I don't want to get too far on the cameras because I think Commissioner Johns and I are going to talk about that at length. And then in front of the whole board, Commissioner Anderson and I also had a good discussion about this. So those 3 things, and then lastly, we got to get more staff out there. This is the short version of that is we've got to get more deputy sheriffs out there, and that's what we're working on now. We swore in some folks today. We just need good applicants. We need some folks. We're not going to lower our standard to hire and fill bodies. I'm just not going to do that.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, you don't want me to do that, but we have got to get some folks. We've got to get some folks hired.
What do you think that residents around there can do to help?
Well, I think a couple things. One, there's definitely you definitely should still call us. I think that's important, right? And so I would say call. I'm not opposed to them themselves videotaping if they see an issue to send to us. The only thing that runs into us a little bit of video is you only see part of the issue, and then sometimes we see the rest of it is a little bit. There's always, as Paul Harvey would say, the rest of the story. But I think the main thing is for that line of communication with the residents there. The other thing that I really would like to do is I don't like the idea of pushing people down the beach. So, for instance, if maybe one beach closes, it's Seaside, you're pushing down, or Alice Beach or whatever, and you're pushing it, what happens? People are coming down to Dogwood. And then I have been really, really surprised at what I will call the local visitors. In other words, people who are in Bay and Okaloosa County, northern end of Walton County, that are showing up there. It's a lot. It's big numbers. It's more than you would think. Yeah. And so
it's not all people visiting.
No. And I mean, again, 4th of July is a little bit of an anomaly, but I think there's 3 or 4 things. There's not the answer. There's a couple of different things we can do.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the way we're approaching it.
Yeah. Camara Cepho says, is there any update on the Defuniak Springs shooting?
So, we actually, interesting enough, I had a discussion with a representative for the local representative NAACP, and he and I had some good discussion the other day. And what we wanted to do was to reassure, because I think there had been some questions about the person arrested in that crime, what his condition was, say. And I was telling Corey before we started, Lindsay, that we're pretty open, and so we were able to let that gentleman go over and talk to him real quick, and they were very satisfied. And it was interesting to hear that the person that was arrested say, "Look, the sheriff's office treated me fine in the jail." So, which I think that's important. It's about transparency, right? Yeah. As far as the case itself, the city of Defuniak Springs is putting together. It's their case. They're putting it together. We assisted, obviously, in the arrest and the capture and those things, but the city's handling the case. So I don't want to comment too much on their case. I know what he was charged with at this point, but now what that looks like long term, I don't know the answer to that. And really, I don't want to comment because it is their case.
Yeah. Eileen Moreland, with the amount of traffic on 393 south of 98, why isn't the speed limit enforced more?
Well, I would think it's not just 393. It's really just everywhere. There's not a lack of desire to enforce it. There's a lack of people for the number of people on the roads, I think, is a short version. So our district lieutenants are watching tonight, too, and we'll try and circle back on 393. But I will tell you right now, we've actually hired traffic units, with dedicated traffic units to go just with our regular patrol folks. It's just incredibly busy right now.
And I can make it a point to, because periodically I've been posting the numbers for the traffic unit, how many traffic stops they've conducted and where. And they're getting after it.
Yeah.
They really are getting after it.
And it's just not them, it's regular patrol, but it is just, we are busy and short staffed right now.
Yeah.
It's a short version of that.
John Harrison, I have had great cooperation and response from the sheriff's office. We're blessed to get great educated leadership and highly motivated deputies.
We're glad to hear that. Thank you.
Gray Cunningham Lynn, was the Rosemary Beach incident a local kid or a visitor? That's an interesting question.
Yeah, it's a unique question because he does not live here full time, and I think the family owns a home here, a second home here. Is what
but they're from Texas.
But they're from Texas, yeah. And I'm really sick of it because honestly, we had problems with this kid last year. I say kid. Here's the thing: when you talk about kid too, this kid is 6'7", so we're talking about a physically a big kid.
Mitchell Miller, he put a case number and is talking about an incident with Deputy May, about Deputy May removing him from his home. He wants to know why we have not fired him yet. I don't know that the sheriff would know that individual case.
I don't. There's, I think I said the other day there was 700 calls on one day. So I actually, until it gets to a certain level, I don't know about it unless it's something like that. But his supervisor is on this, and they can review it and look at it and give you an answer. I just don't know him off the top of my head.
Nan Baker, as Panama City Beach seems to have gotten their beaches under control, is there something we could learn from them?
Well, a couple of things, and just kind of respectfully, we've had nowhere near the issues that some of the neighboring counties have. So I want to be clear about that. One or two issues is nothing close to some of the struggles our neighbors have had. It's not even the same sport, quite honestly. So, and having said that, there is always things to learn.
Yeah, I think that the demographic, and not trying to take away from your question or answer, Sheriff, but when I was a reporter in Panama City Beach, we were dealing with shootings at house parties and girls getting sexual battered on the beach in broad daylight. Yeah. And you were dealing with college kids and then, people coming in to prey on those college kids. What we're dealing with is mostly juveniles.
Yeah, mostly juveniles,
high school.
large crowd. What we're dealing with is large crowds largely. That's not gonna go away. We just have to figure out how to manage those crowds and manage the interaction of those crowds better. But I can't emphasize that enough. They're not even remotely the same sports, quite frankly. We just don't have that kind of problem. What we have, and we've had some thuggish behavior. I mean, that's the short version, right? I mean, you look at the Rosemary and the Dogwood, that's thuggish behavior. It's a short version of it. I mean, it's probably not a technical term, but you know what I mean. And we're having a lot of what I would call unruly around us, but we're not having the outright problems they've had. Here's the other part of it. We're not going to let that happen. We're not going to get to that. So our plan is to step up what I call quality of life cases. We did pretty well at that in Miramar about 6 or 7 years ago. We had some problems in Miramar popping up. We jumped on it. What made this a little bit different, again, is the age of some of these folks. These are young, largely 15, 16, 17, 18-year-olds. And so that always presents a little bit of an issue. They're there in just ginormous crowds. And guess what? Everybody thinks their child's an angel, right? But shockingly, that's not always the case when you get in groups. So the short version is, yes, I've actually had some good conversation. Chief Talamantes and I spoke from Panama City Beach the other day. I've spoken with Sheriff Ford, and I talk pretty regularly, as well as Sheriff Aiden, and we always look for different ways to doing it. But we haven't, to be clear, we're not the point, I can remember Sheriff McKeithen a number of years ago taking pepper spray and having to go down the beach and sandblast it. Let's don't confuse it like that, because there's nothing like that. But there's some things that we need to be doing better, and a lot of it is around getting the appropriate number of people out there and anticipating where these crowds are going to be.
Yeah. Virginia Anderson, was anyone ever held accountable for the mega party held in the private home?
No, we obviously tried to make a case and wanted to make a case from that. We got to an individual that we were ready to submit for an arrest, and the state felt that there was not enough to move forward without continuation. We asked for some continued documentation from some of the folks involved, and really almost impossible to go forward without that from that standpoint. So, yeah, we didn't solve the house party. We did solve the murder that week, and we did solve the shootout that night. And the 25 other house parties we dealt with in between, it's just, we don't get them all.
Yeah. So. Joe Hogan, Do you post the full video of this once it's done? Yes. The full answer is yes. Once we get off air, it'll be available on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Yep. And so anybody can go back and watch it. John Joyner says, "Hey, Sheriff."
Hey, John.
Dave Bennett says, "Hello, thanks for doing it."
Hope your baby's doing good, John. We keep her in our prayers.
Dave Bennett says, "Hello, thanks for doing a great job." Chaz Galloway says, "In regards to Dogwood, do you feel it could be prudent for the TDC to allow Walton County Sheriff's Office's deputies to close the beach accesses after 9 p.m. on busy weekends?"
Yeah. Was there a second part of that question?
And he said, "Do you think that's necessary? Would that require action by the BCC?"
Yeah, I actually asked the BCC about that, and really what we're going to try and do an ordinance and maybe blanket that across the board. To obviously, if it's a homeowner, they can come and go as they need to, right? But I think we can limit the access. But you have to remember, people still have the legal right to go down and stand in the water. That's there's nothing I can do about that. But we don't have to provide all those access. And if we think there's a public safety issue, which is what I think, Chaz, what you're saying, and I kind of tend to agree with, we need to start limiting that access. You have to make it uncomfortable. That's kind of what we're thinking. In fact, one of the things we even talk about with low-speed vehicles or golf carts, we're talking about just taking them all the way to Defuniak. If you want your golf cart, come get it at Defuniak. So sometimes you just have to make it more uncomfortable to try and break that up. The other thing is, in some ways, if we could keep the crowd in one location, it's actually easier for us to deal with a big crowd like the beach. So you have to remember, when people take a video, oh, look at the big crowd on the beach, do something, you can't necessarily break those folks up. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I would rather have them in a crowd than I had running around through the streets in Seaside, right? So we're just trying to find that sweet spot. But we really, I think videos, I think controlling that access, to Chaz's point, and I think having more staff down there is the key.
Yeah. Mike Nessett, why are you allowing security guards to harass and kick people off the beach at Lake Causeway access when they are not on private property? When your deputies come out, they claim they're not surveyors, so they take the word of the hired security guards. Those beachfront homeowners' deeds do not go to the MHWL. I don't know.
High tide water lines, what he's talking about. The short version is, I'm not in the business of allowing anybody to do anything. There is certain things that they have a right. They better be right when they do it. This is what's going on with these private securities for some of the folks down on the beach. Think of it like this. If they're right, and this is what we tell them, if you have private security and you say, well, this person's on my private property, I'm going to air quotes not to be funny, but I just, if it's private property, you have to think of it like a bar. Can they physically remove you from their private property? They can. And I know nobody wants to hear that, and it's going to make people really unhappy. But they had better be right. Because to his point, what this gentleman's saying, if you're wrong, if that's not private property, you just committed a battery, and the homeowners and their homeowner association is liable for that battery that you've committed on them. I'm not familiar where the property line is where he's talking about. I'm still trying to uncork the customer use settlement. I have to tell you, we haven't even fully read through it. It's not even fully finalized in that regard. And we're getting letters from folks saying, you better do this, right? So, for instance, like he's saying, don't allow the security guards to do X. We're getting letters from the homeowner association, you better enforce our private property right. We're suing you because the settlement's done. We haven't even developed a policy on what to do, and it's going to be there's just a whole lot to it. It's not even finalized. We'll think it'll be 90 days. But go back to his point. I don't like the conduct of some of the security that we've seen out there. I probably actually tend to agree with you on that. I don't like that. The question is whether or not I can legally stop them from telling you to get off what they believe to their property. The short answer to that is no. The problem is they better be right. They are assuming the risk. Mm-hmm. They're assuming the risk. Sure. That is a problem. The GP or the property line issue. The property line issue, what we're trying to do now is we're literally going to have to go down there and take GPS units and see deeds. Everybody's arguing about, well, this deed goes to the water, this one doesn't, this one's mean high tide water. The settlement, those that are part of it, allow certain things. Those which aren't part of the settlement, it's going to be a totally different set of rules. And then for what is actually public access is going to be different. It's just a lot to a lot to uncork, and I'm trying to wrap my hand on it. And it's funny because everybody calls and is a self-proclaimed expert in it, and I'm telling you, I do this for a living. It is complex. And I've listened to two $500 an hour attorneys argue both sides of it, tell me why they're 100% wrong and the other person's 100% right. So we're going to sit down and be as reasonable and as thoughtful as we can be and develop a policy and try to come at it from a positive customer service standpoint. If you saw, the board made a motion, I think 2 weeks ago, not this Tuesday, but the previous Tuesday, asking the county administrator to come and meet with us and try and work out an approach to beach access, customary use, those properties that are not engaged in the settlement. I think there's 900 and some odd beach parcels on the front. I don't want to say
and
the
you're
number.
Asking deputies to know each
That's
one.
Exactly correct. And everyone is different, and not everybody. This settlement does not apply to everybody. So we've just got a lot to do. I'm going to ask you to be patient with us. We're trying to work this out.
And I hope that
don't confuse that we like some of this stuff because it's extremely.
And
complex.
I hope that people realize when they're watching this, you have some people like asking us to, hey, we need more enforcement on 393. We agree. We need you guys on Chad Holly. We agree. We need you guys getting kids off the beach at night because we agree. The customer there's only so many deputies,
and people.
By the way,
I get it. People
we
don't
could run to the Alabama line.
Yeah,
too.
I know. I understand people don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear about what you can't do. They want to hear about what you're doing. So our job is to try and solve this and work through it. And we've got a little bit of a plan to start trying to address the beach issues. But I would just say that over the next 90 days, we're going to have to develop. We're going to hire people just to deal with this. I really like the Beach Ambassador program. For those of y'all that remember, there used to be beach ambassadors here. And I think there is some synergy with that. We're going to talk to the board about it. And a beach ambassador, a little bit different than coming at it from a code standpoint, which is come at it from a customer service model, from an educational model, and saying, hey, look, not from an enforcement model with them. To this gentleman's, I think what he is talking about is what the crux of the issue is going to be. He believes that he can, they believe he can't, right? When a deputy or a customer service, code enforcement, whoever goes down there and makes a decision, one half of the party is going to be upset and consider the other half to be favoritism. No way around that. We have to be as open-minded and reasonable and customer service oriented in dealing with that. But I'm telling you, the day they announced there was a settlement or the case was ending, our mail, email, phone started blowing up. So you need to do this now. I've got a 3-page letter from an attorney who's explaining to me how I better start taking action and what this means. And guess what? He's wrong. The law firm looked and said, listen, he's reaching. That's not what it says. So we can't just immediately jump to it. It is complex and it's going to take a lot of work. And we are trying to be thoughtful and intelligent about it. But the one thing I want to say, I want to circle back to this, is I think if we go at it with a customer service model and an education model, nobody will start off dealing with citations or arrest or anything like that. We're just going to say, hey, look, this is what we know to be the facts. And you may or may not like it. We may or may not like it. And that's the other thing people forget. We don't necessarily like everything we do. But we're going to follow the rule of law. And the short version of it is that's what I'm required to do. Yeah. So complex.
It's very complex.
And I don't have a feel. It's funny because, again, I don't have a feel for exactly what's going to happen yet. I really don't. Even with the settlement and looking at it, I'm a little nebulous on it.
Yeah. Paula Marie, by the way, I do want to, Tiffany did make a good point, and I don't know why. I think I've only been to the Chick-fil-A one time, but that road behind the Chick-fil-A actually isn't connected yet to that road that runs behind all of them.
Oh, it's not, yeah.
I thought, for some reason, I thought that it was. Once it is, it would be safer to go that way.
But to her point, it's still with
the other stuff they're going to put there. Oh, yeah, for sure.
A light would be well suited there.
For sure. I think. So, Tiffany, thank you. And yes, we'll advocate for that. Paula is asking, there's a new subdivision in Freeport, Riverwalk. Do you know if the county would be willing to put a U-turn in that area? Everyone uses the U-turn right before the stoplight in Sefco, and it's creating a lot of traffic. She's talking about so that they can get into Riverwalk.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that, but we can absolutely have somebody go look at it.
I think that might be DOT, though, because it's 331.
Is that a DOT?
It's right off 331, isn't it?
Yeah, but if it's off, so here's a short answer: we don't know. We need to find out. So yeah, we definitely can look and see. I'm not sure about that.
It may be because it's US 331. I'm wondering if it's a DOT question or
I'm not
how that applies to the city if it's in the limits. But Paula, we'll provide you with DOT's contact, and they should be able to answer that question for you. Rita says, thank you, Vintage Tiny Houses. Thank you, Sheriff, for making sure all pretrial detainees have full legal access at all times during their confinement.
Listen, that's our responsibility. People forget that part of the responsibility, right? We have a responsibility to treat people appropriately and give them access, and that's the way to do it.
Yes. Ollie Walker, thank you so much, Sheriff, for addressing the unruly teen issue on 30A. One concern is that if they are chased out of one area or one beach, they will just go on to the next. I'm particularly worried about Seagrove since it is not private.
Yes.
It's discouraging that residents now for spring break, fall, and now during the season often feel intimidated to go out in the evenings. I'm wondering how we can make parents held responsible for their teens' behavior. Are they being held responsible for fighting, noise disturbances, underage drinking, or are the consequences minimal that they will just continue? How do we get the message out that 30A won't tolerate this kind of behavior?
So he's absolutely right. He actually touched on what the issue that I have, which is it's actually better to hold us than one location. The problem is if you're in the location they're in, you don't want to be there, right? Mm-hmm. If you got 1,000 people, but it is easier for us to manage so that we don't push them up and down the beach. So if you close Dogwood, you walk down to the next. That's kind of the issue.
And the advantage that Seaside and like Rosemary have is that they're private, so they can enforce a curfew.
But to go back to what the other gentleman said, you got a couple of different things going on there, right? You got public versus private. You got some of these other. The short version of what he's saying, I think the way to do it and what we're trying to get to is there's 26 square miles of basically 26 linear miles of beach down there. And what I think our goal is to be able to run a beach patrol at night as well through the night hours and have people access there. Mm-hmm. Years ago we had a beach patrol and people said that's a waste of tax dollars. We don't need deputies out on the beach at night. Well, now they're going, hey, we need deputies out on the beach at night. And we agree. I mean, we think that's a part of it. But what we're going to do is trying to section the beach up and to make sure there's somebody accountable for that area. And hopefully with the use of some technology, if we start seeing crowds, we just go ahead and start posting up where they're at, right? Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what we're hoping to be able to get to. But to his point, and I think a lot of people forget this, if you have, everybody is legally entitled to access to that water, period. And just because there's a bunch of people doesn't mean that I can stop them from doing it. I can limit the use of public beach access if it becomes a danger, a safety issue. And that's what I'm asking the board to consider, passing that ordinance up and down the beach. So I think a couple of things. I think even though it's not illegal, one of the things we probably ask our residents down there, if you start seeing large crowds, actually go ahead and call us. That doesn't mean we're going to go and bust the crowd up, but go ahead and call us on a large crowd. And it's kind of crazy because it's busy all the time, right? But if you see a large crowd down there on the beach like that at night, go ahead and call us. Let us try and get down there. And we think that dissuades behavior. And that's kind of our plan, to try and do that as much as we can, to put deputies in the midst of crowds very visibly right there and say, look, this is not acceptable. So.
Okay. Riley Peacock has a great question.
Okay.
Since they're releasing them on the same day, which film do you plan on seeing first, Barbie or Oppenheimer?
Surely you jest. Surely you jest. Behold, Vishnu, I am the destroyer of worlds. Corey, can you name it? It's on the front page of Oppenheimer's autobiography.
Yes. I honestly have heard that both have got really, really good reviews, which is awesome. I don't know. I actually don't know that I would see Barbie, but I would definitely see Oppenheimer. But you gotta be able to decompress after seeing a movie like that. I think it's a lot. It's heavy.
A big read.
It's heavy.
Yeah, that's heavy.
Loretta Martinez, what can we do about stray dogs, our neighbor's dog, or a neighbor's dog coming into your yard, killing your chickens, roosters? We have pictures of it. We call the sheriff's office. We've called, but yet the woman is still allowing her dogs to run the streets. Every time we call, she either talks to animal control. I guess She says they're not her dogs, even though we have pictures.
Interesting.
I've lost 30 roosters and chickens because of the dogs coming into my yard and killing them, and still nothing.
So if you'll just shoot us an email with your name and address privately, Corey will get that to Captain Hogaboom over at Animal Control, and we'll figure out what we can do there. I know sometimes you give the warning, but if you've lost that many animals, then there's no there's no excuse for that.
Yeah.
So yeah, just send that privately. Obviously, don't put that on the main Facebook page.
Yeah. Debbie Massey Woolley, if you have not already, would you update us on customary use?
Yeah, actually, a pretty lengthy explanation. But I hate to say it. You said Debbie, is that right? Correct. Debbie, I hate to say this. It's very complex, and I don't think that I have a full. We have not developed a full policy. A policy has not been developed yet because a settlement requires us to develop a policy, right? And we weren't privy to that part of it. So we're now working with the county's attorneys and the attorney for private property owners that are involved in the settlement. And then our job is to represent, to make sure that what we're doing meets the letter of the law. The short version of this, we're going to come out of this with a lot of different rules applying to different places on the beach.
Because not everybody was involved in the settlement.
Yeah, because not everybody was involved in the settlement. Not every property, to the other gentleman's point, not every property went to the water. It is going to be super complex, and we're going to sit down and be as thoughtful as we can as we work with these attorneys. And I know you might find this hard to believe, but sometimes these attorneys don't agree. And it's, and then of course we have our attorney here, and she's like, hey, we think this, and this. Over the next 90 days, what we're planning to do is develop a policy. And then the sheriff's office wants to be very transparent and upfront about it. And so what we're going to do is we're going to shoot a video explaining what our policy is, what our procedures are going to be, and what the law is. The risk for us, as soon as I do that, every one of you that is not happy is going to beat me up and say, I don't like this. It's not my, I don't make the law, right? Mm-hmm. So, but I got a feeling if we don't tell you, nobody's going to tell you. And so we need to sit down, but we have to be right. If I tell you something, I have got to be right on something that's important. Yeah. So we're going to put it out. We're going to do, Corey and I actually talked about this the other day, and Lindsay, about doing a video with some graphics and all this stuff. And my concern is that you're so unhappy with the way maybe it applies to one person or the other. I mean, some people will be happy, some people won't. But my concern is that you won't hear the totality of what applies to what, where. But at the end of the day, I got to do that. I feel like you're owed an explanation. But before I give you an explanation, I need to make sure I understand it. Mm-hmm. And you may have not heard me say this earlier, but we have attorneys calling the day of, you take this action immediately or I'm going to sue you. And then somebody says the exact opposite. Well, it says this, you take this action or I'm going to sue you. Well, at the end of the day, I'm about to get sued. So I'm okay with that. I mean, it's just part of the business we're in. But the public should not be confused. And that's what really, really concerns me. The main thing is for the sheriff's office to be reasonable, to be customer service driven in this, and to be transparent in the way we go about it. And that's what we're going to work on, develop a policy that does those things. We'll probably do a separate podcast on it, quite honestly.
Yeah. Etta Elizabeth, what happened on 393 today? Can you say? We've had swearing in ceremony and then this, so I don't know if it was a traffic crash or what. Etta, if you want to give us a time frame and I'll try to hunt it down for you. Stephanie Jeffries, if my property is in Holmes County, but my physical address is in Walton, then Walton has jurisdiction, correct? No.
But if your physical address is
in Walton.
If the property is located in Walton County, it's Walton.
Holmes County.
Then it's Holmes County.
Property is in Holmes, but my physical address is Walton.
No, that's a little incongruent. That's a little incongruent. In other words, your mailing address is Walton County. I think is what she's saying. The actual address, the actual property is located in Holmes, and it's Holmes County. Wherever your actual property is, regardless what they call it, is what county has jurisdiction.
Okay. Vintage tiny houses, and I'm sorry, that is how it's coming up on my end, so I don't know if that is meant to be.
I'm down with some tiny houses, though.
It says, he or she says, how do we as residents in Walton County schedule a formal meeting to speak to the sheriff about local issues that need resolution? I've had no response from the sheriff when I've called over the past few years and was directed that a message would be forwarded to him. Also, I've written multiple letters to the sheriff over the past few years and have had no response. I'm not clear how or what the procedure is to get direct response from you.
Yeah, I usually, so just kind of the way that works is if you call and you request a meeting, they normally just schedule a meeting unless two things. One, you're pending a criminal case. Obviously, a lot of times I won't deal with in a criminal case in the middle of that. Or two, you show signs of being completely crazy. Now, if one of those two things are going on, that may be one thing. The other side is a lot of times what happened is people will say, I want to talk to the sheriff, and what they really need is to talk to the person that's actually managing that section or that unit. So, but if you've written a letter and you've called and we haven't called you back or I haven't called you, something's up. In other words, I didn't get it or some version of that, but go ahead and shoot an email to Corey. We'll get it to Allie, and we'll try and get you scheduled up.
Yeah.
Because I have to tell you, I probably get on an average day 30 plus, and a lot of times 30 plus people call. So the only person they're talking to the sheriff. And then, I try to call everybody back that calls me if their problem is not resolved, right? But what happens is I'll call and I wait, and we'll find out when I finally get to call them. I go, well, you finally called me back and it's been 2 days and it was an emergency. No. What can I help you with? Well, my neighbor's dog keeps coming to my yard. Well, it's not that I'm too important to do that. But at the same time,
you're not the best person to solve it.
I'm probably not the best person to solve the problem. Mm-hmm. So, but if they haven't solved your problem, if there's something where they're not solving your problem, and you need to talk to me, then go ahead and schedule it, and we'll try and get you fixed up. Unless you fall in the first two categories, in which case we'll probably never meet.
Yeah. Jesse Anderson, would y'all consider Walton County residents on the beach after that time? I live on the north end, but still enjoy the beach.
Yeah, no, that's the point. We can't. You have a legal right to be there unless it's a state of emergency, which we're not nowhere close to anything like that. Yes, you can't. That's the whole issue. You have a legal right to go to the water. By the way, you don't have to be a resident to have a legal right to get to the water. So that's the other thing. You can't just say, well, tourists don't get to do this. So it's a little nuanced.
Mary Elizabeth says, yay, dedicated traffic units. We already have 2. We've had 2 for a year now.
Yeah, they've
been on the road for a year.
But we're adding folks to more. Do that, and we're adding beach. But trying to add, we really want to double up on our beach patrol.
Yeah. Mark Holmes is asking what happened in Rosemary. We arrested a 17-year-old.
Yeah, for brandishing a knife, cutting a guy in a altercation. Mm-hmm. And again, this is somebody we'd arrested last year for fighting with a deputy, and he's back again this year and being rearrested. Yeah. So it's just very frustrating with that.
Mike Lesage, if my car gets in a crash with a golf cart or I'm assuming he means low speed vehicle at Grand Boulevard and they have no insurance or plate and they're at fault, what happens?
They should be, you can sue them. They can be charged for driving that on the roadway. And so if it's the way that works, if it's open to the public and general business, it's required to meet the low speed vehicle or regular vehicle. So they have to have a plate. So,
is Grand Boulevard considered private property or is it public?
Yeah, but it's open. It's private property, but it's open to the public like that. So they have to, if it's open to where routine traffic can come through there for business, they have to meet the requirements.
I didn't know that.
Vehicle on the roadway.
Well, I mean, I guess.
So the short answer to the gentleman's asking is they are civilly responsible for that, and they'll be cited for it as well too. They'll be issued a citation for it. So
yeah. Josette Rhodes, why can't the private neighborhoods with the private beaches be held accountable for their own private security? Shannon Ireland is asking, but he's driving. Well, we appreciate that, Josette.
So part of that is, Josette's kind of the way to think about it is that's true of every property owner in Walton County, right? So they're all private property, all pay taxes, you're all entitled to certain level of service. If you wanted a deputy to stand there every minute of every day, right, then that's something different. Then you have to hire off duty and all that kind of stuff. So, but they're entitled to a basic level of protection. That's actually what some of them are doing with the private security. They're hiring this private security to do that. And going all the way back to the first question the gentleman had, I think they don't realize they're sometimes putting themselves at risk because they if you lay hands on someone and you don't have the legal right to do it, you can be charged criminally and held civilly liable for it. So we actually prefer, if they get into a dispute, I would prefer you call the sheriff's office. I would prefer us to go down there because maybe we can stop a physical altercation. But if a deputy goes down there and they tells you, hey, look, we got to do X, Y, or Z, and you go, well, I just don't like that. I can't help that, right? That's a problem. Yeah. And so right now we're we're just struggling to keep up with the volume of people that can't act rationally and, are demanding some unreasonable things. I mean, that's the short version. But guess what? It's a free country. They can demand unreasonable things, Go back to, there's people that want us to stand around and look all day long. There becomes a time that how much resources can you put on a problem? Any case in Walton County, unless it's murder, a child crime, or an abuse case or something, at some point we have to stop working a case. Just if we don't, whatever, it's a burglary. At some point we have to move on to the next thing. Why? Because somebody wants a deputy at 393, and we got to get on the jail, and we've got to get to that's not an excuse, just a fact. There's only so much you can do at any one time. So to Josette's point, or Shannon, and thank you for not, Shannon, for not taking your eyes off the wheel and doing that. I think at some point we just have to say, look, we just can't do this right now. And it makes people mad. I understand that. But, we have to balance this stuff a little bit.
Yeah.
So they can pay, and they, quite frankly, just to be clear, a lot of them are paying. A lot of them are paying a lot of money for security and protection of of their private property. So it's not that it's not being done. It's just it's disproportionately falling on the sheriff's office to manage that.
Yeah.
That's actually what I'm being sued for. The guy suing me saying to Josette, or to Shannon's question, is that they're saying, well, you're not doing your job, so I'm going to sue you. So I was like, get in the back of the line. If there's any money when the other 30 people get done, you maybe get some too.
Yeah. Etta Elizabeth, will the other guy in the shooting in Defuniak Springs be held responsible for his part in harassing the shooter in the vape shop?
So 2 questions, and again, I have to be careful because we're actually not working that case. The city of Defuniak, is their case. I probably need to be careful commenting on that just because I'm not involved in that part of it. And also, whether or not the conduct was illegal or whether it was just amoral is another way of putting it. And I don't know the answer to that. So full disclosure, I don't know from there.
Yeah.
That's not a cop out. I'm just not the one working it. We're just not working it.
Yeah. Greg Cunningham Lynn, thank you. You guys do a great job. Maybe the word will get out. It's don't mess with Texas. It's don't mess with Walton County, Florida.
Yeah, that's right.
Curtis Zimmerman, when will you support a curfew for teenagers on and surrounding 30A?
So the problem with curfew, and we kind of talked about this before, it's not so much an issue of me supporting a curfew, it's what the law actually is. So the law currently with curfews requires a county-wide curfew. So it would affect Paxton just like it would affect Miramar Beach, right? And so you can't say, well, I'm going to Little League, so it's okay, or I'm going to, so there's a little bit of problem. What we have said is that, look, if you can find something that's rational and reasonable, but understand that applies to Walton. You can't say, well, this is for tourism. Tourism kids don't get to go on the beach, or tourism kids can't. My kids go into the actor studio, so it's okay. Doesn't work like that. If you do those kind of things, they are blanket. That's the law. Doesn't matter what I like it, it's blanket. The other thing is there's actually can be curfews for private property, and there is a lot of curfews on private property. So that's when you hear people talk about curfews, they're usually talking about a large swath of an area, like an entire city or an entire piece of private property. So they can absolutely, they don't need the sheriff's office, they don't need the board of county commissioners. Any piece of private property can institute that. They're capable of doing that.
For example, that's why Miami Beach, Panama City Beach, those are municipalities, and that's why they have enforced a curfew.
Right. Correct.
We don't have a municipality in the south end of the county.
Well, and not only, and you wouldn't want one because of the problems that would come with that, but on top of that, I think, what we said to the board the other day, we were talking about this, is let's explore what our options are with the BCC, see if there's something to do, but what you cannot do is pick and choose what citizens you apply it to. So you can't say everybody from Texas when they're down visiting, but hey, listen, I live in Freeport, so this doesn't apply to me. We can't do that. Or I live on wherever 30A, and it's my kid, so it's okay. I mean that's a little bit of the rub here, from that standpoint. So it's not that I don't support a curfew. It's just we have to follow the law. Whatever the law is, we need to follow it. And that's kind of the big thing. I'll tell you another way to help control some of this, and boy, they're going to shoot me when I say this. Stop renting houses with 50 people in them. That'd be a great idea. How about we all use some self-control, stop building houses that allow 50 people to come in it, and 10 cars parked in there. Mm-hmm. There's the other crux to the problem, right? Is we're getting so much traffic and some of these monster houses, if you want to use that term, where they're really functioning as boarding house, and I am in favor, I'm a huge private property advocate. I believe people have the right to do certain things with their property until it affects everybody else around them. Some of these houses and the people that are being crammed into these, and we used to be able to evict those people. So if you called me out to a house and we did this in Miramar. We threw 150 people out of one house. Bam. Mm-hmm. They lost $10,000, $20,000 right then. But the law changed. And so for us to be able to evict somebody like that, if we do it, they have to give the money back. And guess what? Nobody wants to give the money back. So they're not allowing us to put people out that way. Mm-hmm. That's part of the problem. So if you're renting this house, and maybe it's in Rosemary or maybe it's in Seaside or wherever, it doesn't matter where it's at, and we go up there and it's loud music or it's party, we get ready to put them out. Trust me, the people in Montana that own the house don't want to give the money back. And so that's part of our problem.
And because of the new law, they're required to.
They're required to give the money back.
If the sheriff's office
that's right. If the sheriff's office puts them out, they're required to give the money back, prorate the money, and nobody is wanting to do that. Yeah. And so they're causing us problems in that regard.
Yeah.
If that law would go back and change, I promise you started putting enough people out, it would get some attention.
That's a state law, correct?
That's a state law. It's a state law.
Stephen Chansey. What does Sheriff Mike Adkinson think about FBI Mr. Ray testimony yesterday? Has Mr. Ray been to the area at all since 2019? How close does WCSO work with local FBI agents? Are you satisfied with your relationship with the FBI?
I've actually met Director Ray before. I know he's been here in the last few years. I did not see I have no idea about his testimony at all. I didn't. I can barely keep up what's going on barely go with Walton County. So I'm actually been kind of knee deep in all our local issues. So I'm not 100% sure what's going on with him right now. Obviously, there's some dissatisfaction with the FBI. I can say at the local level, when we've dealt with our FBI, we've got a pretty good relationship with our FBI here. They actually reach out pretty diligently, and a very good professional relationship with those folks. But we're just so in the weeds right now. This is the busy time of year for us, And you can see even tonight, people on both sides of these issues. I want this done. No, I don't want this done. I want this done, but I don't want it. So it's a tough time right now.
Yeah. And I think another issue we're facing is that we don't really have a season anymore.
Yeah,
so
I think
busy
it's 100%
all year round.
True. It's 100% true.
Doug Megg says, thank you guys for being proactive. Larry Mitchell, is there a noise restriction on loud automobiles?
There is, and it actually recently just changed, so it's actually shortened the distance, which is a little bit different from.
Is it 25 feet?
Yeah, it's 25 feet from that, and so yes, there is a noise.
There's a state law.
Yeah, it's a uniform traffic citation.
Yep.
Yeah.
Samet Bake. I think she's replying to somebody else. Underage drinking and in possession of a weapon. Mike Johnson, what were the sheriff's staffing numbers in the Dogwood area during the months of March and April of this year? During spring break?
It was actually pretty heavy. It was actually pretty. There were nights that we had with you say Dogwood. I'm talking about that general area. That's one area. There were nights that we had upwards of 30 and 40 people working in South Walton. That is almost. It's a better part of a third of almost half of our patrol division. Remember, you work 12-hour shifts. Somebody has to come in the next night. Somebody has to come in the next morning. Somebody come in the next day. There were days we had 30 to 40 people working. I can tell you that July 4th night, there was 20-plus people in South Walton working, just down on that area. So, yeah, it takes a lot of people to run it. And you say, well, you have 29. If you have 20 at night, you have to have at least that many or more during the day, right? And then people actually have to be able to take off. I have to be able to give people, days off. So that's part of the issue. We think that probably 40 is the magic number. That's what I want to get to, is where we're running 40. I think that allows us to get control of the situation a heck of a lot better. And so that's what we're shooting for, is to try and staff to the point we get to 40. But I will tell you, normally, just between sickness, vacancy, military leave, pregnancy, I would say on any given day, we are down somewhere in the neighborhood of 20% unavailable staffing on any given day right now. And that's in the heart of our busy season. So,
and keep in mind that number is for the area south of the bay.
Yeah, right.
You're not talking about Dogwood Beach access. There was 30 to 40 people.
Yeah, well, what's funny is because we actually had been working Dogwood. We had somebody at Dogwood earlier, but they had to be moved to Rosemary because Rosemary had a problem.
Yes.
So it's always like that. There's always going to be, it's kind of whack-a-mole, right? You move this folks around. But if we can get to the point that we're running on a routine staffing 30 people, which means I can pull 40 plus if necessary on any given day, I think that'll be solved. That would immediately impact the problem. And that's what we're shooting for, trying to get to. So if you know somebody that's looking for a job that's capable, competent, professional, we'd certainly like to take a look at them.
Yeah. Dan Curry, is there a link on the WCSO site that can or will show the number of traffic infractions by year and category?
I don't know the answer to that. I can tell you where you can find it, though, is the clerk of court's office for sure. Mm-hmm. What did we do? I know we looked at what was it? We just looked at just our traffic on 1 month.
Yeah, I've posted a couple of times in the last year with the number of traffic stops.
Yeah, we run it periodically. It's pretty sporty.
Yes,
it's pretty sporty.
By year and category, I haven't like. I've done it by month, or like I'll do it in the last 60 days or since January 1.
Do you remember what the number was last time when there was a big number on it? Because I know we stopped 400 low-speed vehicles in 60 days.
They've done a ton of traffic stops, yeah. But and I also post how many citations are written too.
I know they got a jail on Chat Holly running 95 miles an hour.
Yes, Deputy Webster caught him going 95 on Chat Holly and brought him to jail.
Yeah, he went to jail.
That's a good question. If you email us, we can get you the numbers. So just give us like what date and time frame you want, and our crime and intel will pull the numbers for me, and that's where I get.
We always do the year numbers, but I don't know that we just periodically do the.
Yeah.
I mean, let's say, hey, for the month of June.
And I could do that again. I could do that again in the near future. I'll just post how many traffic stops they've done and how many citations
You'll
they've
laugh, Dan, when we tell you this, but sometimes we'll post them and people say, that's all you do is try to raise your budget writing tickets. And the other people say, you never do any traffic enforcement. It's literally both sides of the thing. But listen, traffic enforcement saves lives, and obviously very serious. And of course, Dan, obviously, very personally that traffic enforcement and red light people are mad. Corey and I were talking before we got on air about a lady threatening us because she got a citation for double red flags. How dare we do this to her? She paid $6,000 for her vacation, and she does important work, and she's going to see us in court. And we're like, hey, see you in court. Yeah. But literally, am I joking? We were talking about putting her body camera up, maybe just blurring her face and let you see what a deputy sheriff listens to from a self-entitled piece of work.
And I really...
You can say that because I didn't say anything ugly. That was all true.
I really just feel for the deputies that have to... Because I think that, and this is just my personal opinion, I think that the people who are the loudest would never put on a uniform.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's really tough for the men and women who have to deal with these people on a daily basis. But
when they get on the keyboard, they're much calmer and they're much thoughtful. Yeah.
Oh,
shocker. Yeah.
Dan, happy to pull those numbers for you if you want to send me an email. Loretta, I make a living on selling chickens and roosters, and the dogs have killed over 30. I've told I have to get a lawyer. Loretta, I want you to send me an email about the dog issue. She did. Great. We've already got it, so we're on it. We're gonna get back to you. Ollie said, I moved from a state that had an ordinance that didn't permit groups larger than 25 on the beach without a permit. Could we do something like that here too? They also didn't permit people on the beach an hour after sunset and again until an hour after sunrise. These were tourism areas and done by ordinances.
Yeah. One of the problems, and again, just like I'm always talking about, is problems, right? Majority of the beaches of Walton County are now private. And if they're private, you cannot restrict the people's access to their private beach. So that's, again, not whether I like it or don't like it, but that's the law.
Yeah. Bill Carrico, where is the Dogwood Beach access? I've lived here for 25 years and I've never heard of it till now.
It's down from Seaside. It's just a little east of Seaside. It's what's happened is, listen, we're saying Dogwood a lot because that's, there's anytime there's video, it's like they says, it's like Panama City. Nothing like Panama City was. With all due respect to them, they did a great job of cleaning that up. But absolutely nothing like that. However, that crowd down at Dogwood is no different than we deal with pretty regularly at Seaside, at Miramar. It's actually a pretty routine other than we were super busy, those crowds, that's not uncommon to have crowds like that. And that's the gentleman Seagrove's point. I think people are surprised when they see the video, but we could show you videos like that pretty regularly. Well, as far as big, huge crowds.
Yeah, I think that the altercation is alarming for a lot of people.
Sure. It's for all it's
and it was to us too. The Dogwood Beach access is the closest public beach access to the east of Seaside.
Yeah, which is what's going on.
Yeah. Bailey Goodwin, obviously we tend to see the negatives and see the posts and stories regarding issues in our community in South Walton. In general, do you feel like this season has been higher in crime, and do you feel like your department has been able to keep up with everything? Dogwood incident definitely worried some locals.
It's actually it's actually been really good this year, quite frankly. I mean, all things considered, outstanding. Other than say Dogwood, by and large, we were able to stay. We spent a bunch of money in spring break, and we hammered spring break.
Well, and that's what I was going to bring up when Mike asked about our numbers during spring break. Yes, we had a lot of resources down there, but we had mandatory overtime.
Yeah, I canceled people's days off. I made them come to work.
And deputies were working a lot of hours. They were working
tons of hours because we didn't have the bodies. And so the public was very responsive to that. And it's funny because before Dogwood, all we heard is how well that was all handled.
Yeah, we got a lot of good feedback about spring break.
Yeah, so because we didn't handle that well, and so I think there's a couple things. What spring break showed us, which was what we knew, you put resources on problems, you can solve problems. And that's kind of the approach we're going to take. I don't want to get into mandatory overtime all the time, canceling people's days off and say, hey, guess what, for this month you can't take a day off. That's not a good way to keep employees, right, long term. We need to get people hired. But to her point, no, it's actually been pretty good. It's been unruly busy. It has been super, super busy. And we're getting so many requests for different services that's, and some of that's a good thing, right? I mean, some of that's actually a really good thing, and we want people to call. So we're trying to get some people hired. And I'm lucky I've talked to all the county commissioners here. Everybody's supportive. This is a kind of a unique situation. Nobody's saying, hey, you don't need to hire deputies. Pretty much we all agree we need to be hiring deputies. But I will tell you something that anybody listening to this now, and you know what I'm saying, the cost of living or the cost of housing in Walton County is making it extremely difficult for us to hire people. It's true of teachers. It's true of firefighters. It's true of EMT, anything like that. So when we're advertising for people to come here, to be clear, a deputy sheriff that comes in and maybe gets hired at $50-something thousand a year, or a firefighter, or whatever the situation may be, they don't make enough money to be financed for a entry-level duplex in Freeport, because we're charging $300,000 a year for duplexes in Freeport. I get it. Maybe, sell what you can sell and what the market can bear, but we've got to have homes that people that are middle class, public servants, blue collar workers, people that are out that actually drive this economic engine, they got to have housing. And I don't mean slums. They got to have housing.
Yeah.
And I've talked to some really prominent developers. I had a really good discussion with Jay Odom the other day, and he kind of broke the problem down for me. Is some of this stuff is costing so much that even if you gave the dirt for free, it's becoming too expensive to do some of this stuff. But I'm telling you, when you try and hire a new deputy sheriff and they say, we're moving here from wherever, Pensacola, where do I live? $2,000 a month at the sanctuary for one bedroom, $2,100 a month for people can't afford that. Mm-hmm. That's true of everybody, but that's what's going on with us, and I'm sure it's going on in many of your businesses as well too. We're just not immune to that.
Yeah, it's a really tough career to be in right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Carol Bishop says she appreciates these open forums and your earnest answers.
Thank you. We try very hard. It's not always a good answer. It's sometimes pretty bad, actually. But
yeah. Hal Laird says, I love calling Walton County home and really appreciate the sheriff and office efforts. Thank you. You guys have a very tough job. That. Todd Rourke, security guards hired by beachfront owners are becoming overly excessive in their actions, language, threatening actions. Is there a security guard certification program for anyone to be able to act as a security guard, such as conflict resolution? Also, we have security guards harassing locals and guests alike to move from public property, stating it's private, with the same type of aggressive behavior. You have a difficult role.
Yeah, it's a huge problem. First answer is yes, they have a security licensure. It doesn't necessarily involve customer service or mitigation. And I'll circle back to it. And we're going to have to do something about customary use and all that just in general. But the short answer is I think the board and I are trying to work on an agreement between us where we're going to get into some beach ambassador business where we take a customer service forward-facing approach where we get out there and try and resolve these issues without citations or arrest, disputes between public-private property, and then trying to put more deputies on beach patrol. So, right now we run about 9, I think we have 9 or 10 people on beach patrol. 26 miles, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. That doesn't get it. That doesn't get it. And so we're going to try and expand that as well too. But I thought the Beach Ambassador program was really successful. We are super proud of the work our posse and our community service officers are doing.
Yes.
They are such an asset to the citizens of Walton County. Both our community service officers, those folks are doing a great job. We got 2 or 3 of those folks now.
Our posse saves us a lot of money.
Our posse get out there and you look at the hours.
They work a ton of hours.
That John Kasich and those guys have just really stepped up.
We've got a lot of
model. I think that's the model for beach ambassadors, right?
Yeah.
So, but what I need is
we've got a lot of really good ones.
Let's talk about beach ambassadors for a second. It's going to be my open call for a job I don't have yet. I think I'm going to pick on Josette and Shannon and some of those folks. That'd be those are a great example of people that come and be beach ambassadors. People that have a decent, understand, know how to talk to people, small business owners, that know how to do this stuff. So we're going to ask for these beach ambassadors to be local people and local that have an interest. We're going to make sure you're educated. We're not going to put you in harm's way. We're going to try and take care of you.
Who have a vested interest
we'll have a vested interest in this working out. And so, some of the folks maybe that are listening to this, and maybe this is a good part-time job for you is to consider beach. We haven't got there yet. We're going to meet with the board. We're going to try and work something out. But I think there's an opportunity to do something good. And there was a good model. I don't know why beach ambassadors went away. I'm not sure what happened before. But what I said to the board and what my commitment is, I think it's a good. We're not going to send beach ambassadors in the middle of the crowd like was at Dogwood the other night, right? That's not what we're talking about. But during the day, and maybe even some of those can be lifeguards. If you want to be a lifeguard, we can get you trained to be a lifeguard. Maybe if you want to be an EMT, we can make you an EMT. We can work with South Walton and try and anything that supplements improving a higher level customer service. I'm interested in.
Yeah. Amy Noel. Ellington says, I'm grateful I live across the bay and don't have to deal with this. Thank you, Walton County Sheriff's Office. Steve Kramer is asking, what happens to all the Hispanics that get arrested for driving without a license?
They're typically issued a citation or they're taken to jail and then released the next morning by and large. Yeah, so the way that works, just real quickly, is
we have a podcast coming out. We have a podcast
soon, by the way. We should be out anytime dealing with how local law enforcement or local policing agencies handle. I'm gonna stop using law enforcement because when you enforce something, you're looking for something to hammer. I like that. I'm gonna try and get as a sheriff. There's a certain way I think you should act. But anyway, separate issue. The ADD is firing full tilt tonight. So
he just finished his coffee.
So if you're arrested and you're here undocumented, you're here illegally, you're charged with whatever that crime is. You're given a bond schedule just like everybody else. Unless ICE, Immigration and Custom Enforcement, places a detainer or a hold on you, you are released. That is the law. I have zero control in that. In fact, you could get my pantsuit off of me. So how often does that happen? Out of the last 100 people that we arrest, and I know because we just checked these numbers, out of the last 100 people we arrested that were here illegally, I think they picked up 10 total. So it even doesn't matter what they were charged with.
And one of them was a homicide suspect out of Fort Lauderdale. That was a cold case.
Absolutely. So, it's not, that's not, the sheriff's office doesn't do that. We don't have a control of that. We do our part. We notify, which is what we're required by law to do. And whether or not, but people get so angry. They're angry that we call ICE, and there are people that are angry that we don't deport people. But that's not our role. We can't do that. We can't invent a new authority for us.
Steve, to answer your question, they're either issued a citation or we bring them to jail.
Yeah, every time.
And then we have to by law notify ICE.
Yeah, absolutely.
And ICE has to get back to us on whether or not they're going to pick them up. And if they don't,
they have to tell me within 24 hours whether or not they're coming to get them.
Yeah.
And then we can only hold them a certain number of hours after that detainer for that detainer to be good.
Yeah.
So it's complex. That's a complex issue.
Yeah. Alicia Schnitzer, under the list of career options on the website, what does the unpaid internship position consist of?
Typically, the internship is we normally do from our college interns or people working on a degree. However, we also like that with people coming in and shadowing and trying to see whether or not maybe a certain area is a career for you. So let's just say maybe you're not a college student, but you're considering a career in, fire rescue, as an EMT or paramedic or animal control or CIB or crime scene investigation or communications. Any of those areas we cover, we like people to come in and we treat it like a typical internship, which is, we're not paying, but we're trying to give you a level of experience so you can decide whether or not this is a profession that you want to enter into. And so that's kind of what that's about. We need to go back to a Citizens Police Academy, though. That's something we haven't done in a long time. You like how I come up with new ideas that cause people extra work right here on the fly? That's a Mark Wendell job. Lieutenant Mark Wendell.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, I know. Lieutenant Mark Wendell just...
Lieutenant, I'm so sorry. I apologize ahead of time. Sammy Jackson. Are the new deputies aware that citizens are allowed to film interactions with law enforcement? Some agencies don't seem to understand. Sammy, that's a great question.
Yeah, our guys know it. If you want, the short
yes. So Lindsay and I teach a new hire class. Yeah. Every single person, not just deputies that walk through the door at the sheriff's office, have to sit in this class. And Lindsay and I explain to them that if there is no expectation of privacy, or if you are in a public place, anyone can film you. They are all aware of that. We've had First Amendment auditors. Deputy Rhea was absolutely amazing in dealing with one of them and his interaction with him. So yes, they are aware that they can be filmed at any time.
Now I will give you a caveat because I think it's important to understand that.
I think you should be polite.
Listen, you're not legally required to be right.
I know.
You can legally be an idiot, right? I mean, there's no constitutional guarantee that you're going to act reasonable. However, understand that, and you can do, there's a big difference what you can do and you should do, right? So you can do all these things and you can be nasty about it, whatever your constitutional right. But if you interfere in the performance or cause them to become distracted when they do, and they give you a lawful command, it's usually not the lawful command. It's not normally to turn it off. It's normally to step away or step back. If you're in for that, then you run the risk of obstruction. And just so you know, if you're dealing with a deputy in Walton County, they're filming. They got a body camera on. So,
and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the Sergeant Josh Bennett, and he has said that during traffic stops, people will walk between his car and the car that he stopped, or they'll walk up and ask what's going on. And it's dangerous. I mean, it's dangerous for the deputy. It's dangerous for the person that's being stopped.
And that's actually a really big deal. And they get so wrapped up, well, I can film. You're causing him to be distracted if you're close enough. You want to stand off the side, do X, Y, Z. And the other thing that will get you got with us, if I'm just being honest, is I don't believe that you have a constitutional right to show someone's misery. In other words, somebody's hurt badly in a traffic accident, you want to run up there and film them suffering or partially undressed in the middle of all this. I don't think you have that right, and we'll, that's where we draw the line, because we have an obligation to protect the victims in these cases as well too. But short of that, just because we get filmed all the time, and all our guys, all our men and women that on road patrol are wearing
body cameras.
We even talked about that with fire rescue one time. Our fire rescue app, we kind of had this discussion about whether or not there was some agency in using body cameras. The problem was we come at people that are hurt and they're victims, and we don't want to do anything that causes stress to a victim from that standpoint. So we chose not to do that at this point.
Yeah. Sydney Lindley Stickney. Has WCSO considered using drones to monitor the whole stretch of beach and 30A?
So there's actually some limitations on law on what I can do. So believe it or not, there are some really strong limitations on how we use drones. But I think, again, in our discussion with Commissioner Johns, I think there is some opportunity. What I would like to see is cameras at these beach accesses, some version of that, so that we can use that. We use drones where we can, but again, there are some FAA limitations and Florida law limitations on what I can use them for. We have them. We have some pretty good drones.
Mitchell Miller is asking. He was the one that had the case and was asking about Deputy May, if he can drop off the case so that we can review it. And he's asked Lieutenant Jordan to reach out to him.
Okay. And Lieutenant Jordan would be the one. Yeah, he would be the one to review that. Yeah,
Stephen Chansey, have you ever met Mr. Chris Ray? He's saying to me, he prays I feel better. I feel great. I coached this week. I help at University of West Florida. Coach does a team camp over in Foley, Alabama, and
so you yelled at kids.
No, it was a very packed gym, and I had to talk loudly. So I just lost my voice. I feel great.
As opposed to normal.
Yeah. But I was coaching this week, so that's what my voice is taking a vacation. Yeah. Loretta is asking what email. Lindsay, I think you already replied to her. Yeah. Yes, and then Sammy is asking, are the deputies aware that people can film during traffic stops? And they film during traffic stops. So yes, they should be aware.
Sure.
Jeanette Coram, isn't closing certain accesses only going to push folks down the beach?
There's a potential of that. That's exactly right. That's why we don't just blanket do it. To your point, that's why we don't blanket do it. Because then what you do is you run everybody into the streets, right? Mm-hmm. It would be easier to keep them. Again, that's the whole issue about having, say, for instance, a curfew. Let's run them off from one area or whatever. I mean, it's always better to keep them largely in a singular area. The problem is you may not want it behind your house or where it's at. I mean, the more we can keep people in a kind of supervised area, the better it's going to be. So we are careful about when and where we would close beach accesses, or I shouldn't say close. Probably limit's a better word. Limit access. Mm-hmm. But yes, we're very cognizant of that being a problem. It's the same actually problem you run into with stoplights. Everybody says, why don't you turn the stoplight green, get somebody to work the stoplight? All you do is back it up at the next light, and it becomes a problem. So you have to be careful when you do that you're not creating a problem, just moving it down the road, which is what he was talking about in Seagrove earlier about pushing a problem there.
Yeah. Victoria Lee, I think we addressed this, but we've had so many questions that we're kind of catching up here. I understand there cannot be a curfew implemented unless it's countywide for 16 years and younger. Since South Walton is unincorporated versus Freeport, Paxton, Defuniak, why can't it be done for only unincorporated areas? Miami Beach was able to enforce a curfew in specific areas.
Yeah, we're probably confusing a couple of different things here. So one, you can look at tailoring a certain things, and we just got to decide what there's a stomach to do. And I think, but you have to remember the vast majority of this county is unincorporated. And so when you're going to have selective enforcement, you just need to make sure that it statutorily makes sense and what you're going to do with it. Because here's the truth with the parents that are coming down here. They're not going to shut their kids up at the house at 9 o'clock, and you need to understand that. So we're going to be running them out of the streets, and everything is well and fine until we start, if you arrest 6,000 kids for just standing outside at a curfew, you've got to make sure it's legally defensible, because you're ultimately going to have to use force on some of them. And that's a big deal. And it's fine until it's your kid. And that's just the truth. So I think one of the ways we need to look at this, whether we consider, limited access or we consider curfew, some of these things, is does it make sense, or are you making the problem worse? You're making the problem worse. But there are limitations on the curfew. I got to go back to that. And everybody thinks that you can pick and choose, but there are some statutory limitations that we're kind of broadly applying here. But we're going to look at it. We continue to try and find ways to do that and discuss it with our council and say, look, what is it you want to do?
Joseph Paul says, hello, Sheriff.
Hey, JP. You're an attorney, JP. Pile in there and let them know what I'm saying.
Yeah. Vintage Tiny House says, Sheriff, last question, Trump 2024 or DeSantis 2024? I don't know that you're going to answer that. I think that might be one of the only questions you don't answer.
No, I actually endorse the governor, and so it's certainly nothing against the president, but that's kind of where I'm at. But my number one goal is to deal with Walton County.
Yeah,
Walton County
for sure. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm like catching up, and we've addressed some of these questions, but I'm like slow to get to them. Thank you for discouraging mega houses.
Wish I could stop it. Do more. I wish I could.
Bo Wills, could there be language in a lease agreement that says if the party is evicted, they forfeit appropriation?
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I think that to me, we could do something with that. I mean, I think
in a lease agreement.
I think so. I think that's the real opportunity there.
Brian Ramsey is asking, how do kids know to go to the Dogwood beach access? Does a local tell the kids on vacation? Is there something else going on? The kids talk on Snapchat. The short answer is social media.
Yeah,
and they all talk
by the way,
other.
we know that they're going to go down smart. That's some of it, but most of it, they're seeing big crowds. They just walking down the beach. A lot of it's not necessarily, the vast majority is actually walking down the beach, right? So it's not just coming down Dogwood. We're going to make that place famous, and it's really just one of multiple places we end up having issues. But the short version of it is that private property closing is what drives a lot of this. Actually, 90% of it's driven by the fact that private property is pushing them off their place, and so you got
and they're looking for the
800 to
nearest
1,000 kids. They're looking for the nearest beach access. So they're just walking out. Here's the next one. Let's go down there.
Yeah.
What we don't want them is walking through the neighborhoods. 1,000 kids. Could you imagine if we started? Let's talk about curfew. Can you imagine if we started trying to catch kids running through the thing all night long? Thousands and thousands of them. That would be intense.
Dan is kind of following up to his question, and I kind of want to take a minute to address something that you've talked about during StarCom. He wanted to see how the numbers are affecting certain locations, and we've actually studied dangerous intersections in Walton County absolutely. Over the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, we do. So one of the things we monitor is the impact on life safety based on enforcement in certain areas. And I can tell you, we reduced the number of fatalities in Walton County. I know it was 2 years ago. I think from 36 to 22. That's a big deal. That is, at the end of the day, that's 14 families that didn't get that call. And so we felt like that was super successful, and it's not something that gets a lot of press. It's not something people talk. They're interested in the crowd at Dogwood, right? You're interested in this and that or whatever. Not that those things aren't important, but to me, nothing is more important than your children going home at night. Your loved one coming home is important. And so we looked at the deadliest or the most dangerous intersections, locations in the county, and we said, let's take the top 5 and let's hammer them. Let's absolutely hammer them. And over the course of a year, we knocked those things down. Again, 14 lives were saved. That's the way I look at it. We do that every year. We analyze what are the 5 most traffic, where are the most traffic crashes and crashes with injuries, and then we say within a half mile we step enforcement up in that area. We just hammer them, and we've had some pretty good luck with that. So, but it's a rolling target, right? So we go look at it next time. Where's it at this time? Certain things change it. Traffic construction changes it. 393 was one for a long time, right? 283 and 98 was one. We had one in Mossy Head at one point. So Ramsey Branch and Freeport used to be Ramsey Branch and 331 used to be one of the worst. Changed. You add a different lane. Change it. Right now, Old Business 331 and 331's a bad one. I mean, we try to monitor these things and see where the accidents actually happen and are we putting resources there.
Yeah. Hurtado Lopez is asking what happens to Hispanics who drive without a driver's license.
Yeah, we touched on that earlier, Mr. Lopez. Essentially what happens is they're issued a citation and or if they're arrested for driving license to vote, they're taken to Walton County Jail and they are given first appearance and typically released on bond at first appearance. Nobody's being deported because they are driving without a license. The ICE is not coming to get anybody for that.
Just that.
If they have a detainer, they've been previously deported, they've been arrested for there's a serious charge behind it, maybe, but just on these misdemeanor arrests, they're not doing that.
Yeah, from what we've seen,
ICE could change what they do tomorrow, but that's what we've seen.
Yeah, Marilyn Willott, what does it take to have a patrol on residential streets that have signs up, children at play?
Shoot us where you're at, and we'll try to make sure somebody out there, trying to help monitor some speed.
Yeah. Mike Johnson, on average, how many traffic citations are being issued per month by your 2-deputy traffic unit? I can definitely pull those answers for you.
I'm not sure.
Jessica Hoover, one of our crime analysts, has already texted me and said that she's working on the traffic numbers. Mike, if you want to email me, pio@waltonso.org, and I can get you those numbers. Victoria said, Victoria, if you want to ask your question again. Oh, it was the curfew question. Okay. I'm following up. Okay. Sorry. I'm just catching up. Frank Guillory says, thank you for all that you do.
Appreciate you,
Frank, we miss you.
Good visit with you the other day.
Yes. Yeah. Good visit. Frank, we appreciate you. Sheriff and I were talking about you.
Yeah, Frank's our new NAACP representative here in Walton County.
Yeah. And then I know people are asking the same question, so I'm just gonna, if we've addressed it, I'm gonna kind of go over those questions. That's not me avoiding it. We've addressed some of these, and then Bailey Goodwin, Stephen Chansey just saying thank you. Bill Carrico, I live in Peach Creek. There is a development just starting that we were told that was just for first responders, law enforcement, and nursing. I sure hope they were honest.
I have not heard that. I don't know anything about that.
Peach Creek.
I know where Peach Creek's at. I've never heard that. We'd love to hear that. But yeah, I don't know anything about it. But if you do the quick math on it, again, if you're making $50,000-$60,000 a year, and the house is over $300,000, you would have to come up with $40,000 down to avoid PMI. Mm-hmm. I don't know any single person that can do that. Certainly at 7% interest.
Yeah. And we're almost there.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
The people that live on the beach need to mark their property lines, and that will let everyone know what their property lines are.
There's some limitations to that too. So that's in there lies the problem. They actually can't mark they can't put permanent fixed markers. However, we need to get through the next 90 days, read this settlement, figure out what we're going to do, and figure out how we're going to manage this issue. But we will be my guarantee to you is we're going to be customer service, forward-facing. We're going to be very transparent about it, and then we're going to put it in ways that you can research it and find it quickly, and then make that decision. None of that may mean that you like it. You may think it's. The bottom line is I don't get to pick and choose what I like. I got to follow the law as it applies. So, But we're going to try and make sure that you're aware of it. That's the biggest concern for me.
Yeah. Tiffany Meyer has a great question. Who has jurisdiction over wave runners on the Choctawhatchee Bay? Many riders are riding too close to docks, underage drinking on the wave runners. She's worried someone's going to get killed or cause property damage. There's a lot of issues around the Point Washington area.
Yeah. Typically, you're going to have FWC out there. Mm-hmm. If it's something specific, you can call us. But again, that's one thing we have to pull somebody off, put them on the jet ski, not that we can't do it, but
FWC may be closer.
FWC
to be quite honest,
may or may not be closer. Yeah, for sure. But go ahead and call, even if they're doing it. Go ahead and call. If we can get somebody out there, we'll try and get somebody out there.
Again, if we've talked about stuff,
but I do think it's important for everybody listening. We've probably had 15 different requests for different locations of different things you want your deputies doing. And I'm about that. I'm all about doing it. But I just ask you to be understanding we can't be everywhere all the time. And that's one of the struggles right now. And I was saying that to the commissioner. That's what we got to hire these folks and get them out there.
Yeah.
Try and do as much as we can.
Margaret Lowry, is it a crime to remove property from a probate property?
Yes. Short answer.
I've got to be vulnerable right now. I don't know what a probate property is.
In other words, somebody has died in with or without a will that hasn't been testated, and they're going to go through it. And typically a judge frowns on you removing anything before it's been dismissed. And I mean, the short version is yes, but there's always caveats to that.
Yeah.
And typically what you do is then notify the court, and they make a decision on whether or not you were justified in doing that. Because you may say, well, Mama gave that to me, for instance.
Yeah.
And that's not, but it just depends what the court says, but it can be for sure.
Yeah. Is that considered civil?
It can be both. It can be civil and then it can be criminal.
I'm just asking because I don't know.
That's a whole level of complexity in that.
Yeah. Connie Nelson, I love Michelle, the Beach Ambassador by Pompano Joe's.
Yeah. And that's what we want more of. We go, hey, these people are trying to help me. Let me give them some water to pass out,
Yeah. Mary Martin Adams, we own a small home off 30A, the shell road that is used as a cut through during heavy traffic periods has become extremely dangerous due to speed and reckless driving. Are speed cameras permitted or flock cameras to ID trespassers onto private property?
Trespassers for sure. Yes, we can do. If you want to reach out, Lieutenant Mark Wendell will talk about trying to help you get set up there for sure. And even with speed, we can go back. We won't cite them on that. However, if we got the same people, we can identify them and go and address it. So, if you'll Lieutenant Mark Wendell's email, or do you want to just email? She's going to comment.
Captain Taylor Park is another one that is involved in flock as well. Randy is asking, is anything being done about the growing gang issue we seem to be having? I believe that they call themselves CPK and may be claiming to be the culprits of some of the recent gun thefts.
That is news to me. So I'm not saying we're not, but we'll have somebody look into that. Our intel folks may have something on that, but that's not about. If you have something specific you want to send back, if you want to email, you can email that privately. We'll have somebody take a look at it.
Deanna Smith, just wondering, with the concealed carry being lifted and people being able to open carry, that's not open carry. If gun crimes go up, how will you combat that and combat people's safety? So concealed carry is not the same as...
It's permitless carry. The short version is you don't have to have a concealed weapons permit. You cannot open carry. And we've had, listen, I think I said this a couple weeks ago, I had to deal with somebody at Publix the other day walking out with their 45 strapped to their hip, and thinking that it was open carry. So we're trying to address that as well as we can, but reasonably in the way we go about it. The short version is we haven't seen an uptick in that, and obviously it's a very new law. We'll try and monitor it as it goes forward. To my understanding, there has not been an uptick in other places that deal with it, but we're just going to have to see how this shakes out. I just don't know. The short version is I don't know the answer to that yet.
And I think it's too soon to tell.
I don't know the answer to that
we're 13 days in, so... Brooke Louise Carroll, this isn't really a sheriff question, but maybe you can help on who to contact within the county. There's a road that needs serious work in Freeport. Law enforcement ambulances cannot easily get down it. What would you suggest? I don't believe it's a county road, but it does have a county boat launch at the beginning of the road. Do you have any thoughts?
So that's actually kind of an interesting question. I would say contact County Public Works. Those folks, email them at the BCC. If there's a county access park, at some point the county may have some jurisdiction on the road. If it's a private road, there's really nothing we can do. But we had a fire truck, a $1 million fire truck, basically, that was 3 months old. That a private road, they went down the private road to help someone, and it collapsed. And we were lucky we were able to salvage it, but we thought we lost a $1 million fire truck because of a cheap culvert. That's. So the private roads, the ability for us to get it down them is actually a big deal to us.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for your question.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's actually a good question.
Dan wants to thank you for taking the time to speak with him about work crews with Parks and Rec.
That's good question. And by the way, I'm not sure if Dan ever got the answer. Dan, you need to know so whether you ever got to the answer to your question about that as well too.
Yeah, and I can get him stats too. And Jess is already kind of working on some of that. She's listening. Dashia Myers, I have a strange question. I've heard so many deaths from fentanyl overdoses. I was curious, is this people knowingly taking this drug, or is it mixed in something and they overdose, but they didn't know they took it? It seems drugs are heavily in and around Chat-Holly, Freeport, and Defuniak. Are you seeing that as well? Is there a map on drug-found locations like the crime app show battery, theft, etc.?
So, Dosha, it's like a couple of different questions. The short version of that is, I think most of our fentanyl overdoses are people that got it and they didn't know they got it. They're not typically buying the fentanyl. That's not the major problem. Problem is they're trying to buy a cheap heroin, and you can make more heroin with fentanyl, or they're buying pills or Xanny bars or whatever they think, and it's mixed in there. So that's largely what's going on. You're getting these overdoses regard to that. The number is pretty staggering, quite frankly. I think, South Walton Fire District and Walton County Fire Rescue, we track those numbers as well as our vice guys. It's unbelievable, really, numbers. The amount of time we Narcan people, the amount of people we transport. The short version of mapping where drugs are found, it would be a solid red map in the county. I mean, I hate to say it like that, but they're everywhere. They're ubiquitous. So I don't know that would necessarily help one way or the other, but there's a bunch. There's a bunch, and there's certain areas, obviously, that where if we have houses where people tend to shoot up or they tend to do those kind of things, that they pop up, but those tend to come and go. Quite frankly, they go for, well, we run them off in there, and then somebody sets up a camper somewhere else. So yeah, that's a good question. I mean, we can do some markings, but we got to be careful not to identify people that are victims. Giving their home address away too. But that's worth looking at, Dosha. I don't have an issue doing that. Oh.
Kathy Polk Armstrong, appreciate you and your department. I'm tuning in a little late, but I've only seen about 4 or 5 patrol cars this summer in Miramar Beach. How do we get even more distribution of deputies as we have issues? It can't just be all about 30A.
You got that right, sister. Preach on. So I have said, listen, and literally the same thing you're saying, I'm getting from the people in Defuniak Springs and the people in Freeport and the people in Red Bay, and that's not being facetious. If you go back and listen to some of this, we probably, again, have had requests for, I'm going to guess maybe 12 to 14 locations now saying they want more deputies, and I agree with you. We're in the process of trying to do that. Miramar's had some pretty heavy deputy presence, so it's kind of one of the things I have to say. Just because you don't see it doesn't mean they're not there. You got to keep that in mind too. We GPS our vehicles, so we know where the deputies are at, and we try very hard to track them. It's just super busy in Miramar. I mean, that's Miramar has probably, give or take, on any given a weekend like this weekend, they probably had 40,000 people, 40,000+ people. It's busy, and so we need more down there. I think our goal was to ultimately build another station, another South End station. The station we operate here, if you know, we're on 331 and 98 in Santa Rosa Beach. It was designed in 1998. I can tell you a lot of things have changed in Walton County since 1998, and we run a lot of our business out of here now. So our goal was to build a South End substation that would accommodate us running people out of here. We're just, that's so far down on the list right now, it won't happen during my time in office for sure. So the short version is we're in the process of heavy hiring. We are hiring and training around the clock. But I have to tell you, we're getting a new crop of applicants that say, I don't want to work in this business anymore. Oh, by the way, I don't want to work at night. And I don't like you telling me that that I can't say something ugly on social media when somebody says something about me. And I don't like being criticized. And they're quitting. And we're firing people. We fired probably 4 new deputies in the space of 6 months for attitudes. And so if you're short, just be glad I didn't keep some of those folks. Because some of them, the attitudes were so bad that we're like, hey, this is not a good fit for you. This is not what Walton County is about. So I hope you can understand sometimes it's better to work short than have the wrong people. But we need more applicants. And in case if you're wondering if it's here, it's everywhere in law enforcement. Sheriff Aiden and I have this discussion. Sheriff Ford, Chief Talamenta, we're all having these discussions. And so right now I've got my deputies and my firefighters are making less than a starting waste management driver. Man, that's hard to stomach. It's hard to stomach, work nights. That's an important job, waste management, and I have a lot of respect for that, so do not take that the wrong way. I have nothing but love in my heart for people that work for a living. But it's hard to make you work nights, Christmas weekend, and get complained on when I can go and work as a beach chair vendor or do something else or work with the waste management, or work CW Roberts, work these other places that I'm going to get some weekends off, And so it's very difficult right now to get people that are wanting to do this. But it's incumbent upon us to have the right people.
Yeah. Chris Lehman says, Sheriff, I wanted to praise the incredible work of your jail employees. Proud of the programs they've been put into place to invest in the future of people.
Thank you. We think it's good stuff, right? I mean, it's important to try and change lives where you can.
Yeah. Folks just saying thank you. Tashia Myers saying thank you. Vintage Tiny Houses. Brooke Louise Carroll is asking if there's a plan for the Musset Bayou intersection. There's always crashes there. That would be... I don't know if she means more enforcement or a traffic light.
Yeah, what we do, just so you know, every year we typically take the 5 most dangerous areas for traffic crashes that result in injury or fatality, and then we let the numbers drive that. So I don't know what it is. That's not one of them this year. I know that for a fact. Yeah. But
Clay Fallis says TPD 631 says hey. And you should promote Dave Talley. We have promoted Dave Talley.
So Clay's enjoying retirement. He just recently retired after over 25 years in Tallahassee Police Department.
And Sergeant Talley's working nights and on the road. And
you tell Clay you could start a second retirement and come to work. That's what you work. I can have you fixed up by next week.
Yeah. Julie Lewis says, I miss y'all tonight. Thank you for what you do. You didn't miss us. We're here. We're just a little late getting to you. Josette wants to know if she was a beach ambassador, if she'd get a 4-wheeler.
We just said we might do a little additional driving challenge, but no. I mean,
listen,
you're good enough to keep Shannon from driving. So I mean, I think this would be. I'm not joking about that. I think Josette, people like you and Shannon and folks like that are have run a small business, being engaged, involved. I think there's a lot of local people that could be engaged. I think we could get you trained, and I think it would be fun, in some ways. I mean, because it's all going to be customer service oriented, and then we'll let the deputy. Fortunately for my deputies, they're going to be the ones that deal with the hammer. But that's okay. That's okay. That's the business we're in.
Mm-hmm. Ollie Walker, to Victoria's point, looking into and figuring out some level of curfew during troublesome times, get the message out to parents that even on vacation, they're still responsible for their kids, especially after a certain hour.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm sure they wouldn't allow their kids to congregate until 2 or 3 in the morning in their own town. Why should we be made to tolerate it here?
I've said this. I could not agree more. In the words of Corey, retweet, because drives me nuts. But again, go back to that curfew. You can't do that on private property. So just hypothetically, you can pass all the curfew you want, but if Rosemary, Seaside, Sandestin, Majestic Sun, if any one of those people says they're not doing it, or any one of the private houses, you don't have a curfew. That's the problem there. That's where we're running into issues.
Yeah. Todd Jackson said, have you ever threatened anyone with a flip-flop? Hello from your TPD family.
Who was that? Who said that?
Todd Jackson.
Oh, he ought to know about that.
Have you ever threatened anyone with a flip-flop?
I refuse to answer that question on the grounds that you may be the victim of that.
Dashia Myers, how is it being handled with illegal immigrants in the restaurants, construction, hospitality? Are they still able to be working even though we're past the July 7th date? What if they're living with someone or renting a room, riding in the car with someone? I heard this would be a felony. Is this really happening?
That's not true. It's not a felony. It's not a felony. It's a civil infraction. We're talking about a couple of different things here. One, that's not in that. The local law enforcement does not have enforcement action in the deportation or the detention of local folks. The law, as that regard, has to do with hiring people that are past that and paying in. There's an enforcement mechanism the governor set up in, don't quote me on this, but I think it's Department of Revenue. But as far as like stopping someone and putting them in the car and deporting, there's no even a mechanism for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We got to get that podcast out.
Yeah,
we have a whole podcast explaining local involvement in immigration. We've got to get this out. There's so many questions about this.
Well, and I think a couple of things happen. I think that Florida passed a law, and then I think that people don't realize.
ICE had a operation to pick up people that already had existing detainers.
Correct.
They did it the same week the law.
People are associating
that together.
And they're not the same.
And listen, this is how political people are. People say, well, blah, blah, blah did it to embarrass the governor, or the governor did it, pick your story. That particular operation had been announced months in advance. It just so coincided.
Yeah. Yeah. Margaret Lowry Cumby says, when can we make an appointment to have a sit down with you?
Just call my office. Absolutely.
But like he said earlier, there's some cases where he wants.
Yeah, if it's something that somebody else can handle first, let them look at it. I mean, just so I can be more effective, because what happens is, again, probably 30 people a day say the only person I'm talking to is the sheriff, and then they don't want to tell us anything about what they're calling for or coming for, and it's something that's I won't know anything about it when you get in there, right? And then I have to go find the person actually responsible and then figure out what's going on to be more efficient with your time. It usually works better. If you want to talk about big picture stuff or something, just make sure you give me a little heads up so we can kind of look at it.
Yeah. Bob Good Why should I renew my concealed weapons permit now that concealed carry law has changed?
Sure. I think reciprocity, that's a term that you'll hear used a lot, which is other states that honor concealed weapons permits. So other states do not necessarily honor permitless carry, right? So some states do. So the advantage is that if you have the permitless carry, you're covered in all 50 states. That's really you'll see a lot of law enforcement officers that had it for that same reason, just to make sure it was taken care of, it was identified, there's no question. Other words, you get a patchwork of states, what states allow what. I mentioned the gentleman coming out with a 45 strapped to his hip. He was just sure, he goes, well, Florida has reciprocity. He said, yeah, but you can't grant a right to somebody from Tennessee that doesn't exist in Florida. That's where a concealed weapons permit kind of prevents that kind of stuff from happening. So it's if you're going to travel outside the state, it's a good thing to have.
Yeah. Todd Rourke, how can we get safety signals at crosswalks, especially in front of Cassine Station, Seagrove, the ones like at Providence and the Big Chill, the hub? Who do we reach out to for that?
Man, that is a great idea, great point you brought up. County Public Works, and we would love to see any pedestrian crossing be marked. If we could use a light or a sign, I am so in favor of that. The ones in Rosemary really well marked. There's a couple that are marked well in other locations, but a lot of them are not marked well. Mm-hmm. And the pedestrian has the right of way at those intersections. That's what a lot of people don't understand. Whether you agree with it or not, the pedestrian has the right of way.
Vanessa Beard, may I suggest we put larger or more do not drive golf carts on sidewalks? Yesterday, a cart trailed walkers, and today 2 grown men were on a sidewalk just surfing deer. Somebody's going to get hurt by surfing.
So yeah, that's so aggravating. Yes, but I think they know what they're doing too. Quite frankly, and so we need to just ticket them. That's a short version. We're going to start. We're actually talking about towing those low speed vehicles and our golf carts in violation. We tow them now. If we get them now, we a lot of people don't realize we tow them. We tow a lot of those things. But maybe we ought to impound them. I don't know. We're going to have to talk about it. Maybe we should impound them up at the office in North Admin. Maybe that's the right answer.
I've got 3 or 4 questions from John G., so I'm just going to read them to you. Is your department, law enforcement, currently understaffed? What are you doing about it? What's the command staff ratio versus the actual working deputies? What's your turnover ratio? It seems you have a lot of it.
So just kind of the short version is, yes, we do not think we're appropriate staff. The short plan is we've been running pretty much round the clock, hiring, recruiting, pretty consistent. Again, Okaloosa, Bay, everybody, it's not unique to Walton County. Our turnover, actually, I don't remember the percentage off the top, but I want to think it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 14, 15%. That's actually not really too high in the big picture. Because some of those folks, you got to realize that we'll ask them to leave. Command staff wise, we're actually under command staff. One of the problems we have, and there's we follow the basic military structure on what is span of control or span of supervision. So we don't try and invent that. We try and, the United States military has done a great job with it. They understand how to do it. And so that's kind of where we're at with it. We're probably light a captain here or there, but by and large, the issue really is getting enough people that are doing the work. I think so at the lower level, but we may, depending what we do, we may have to create a beach services captain. If we get upwards of 40 and 50 people, that may make sense to add another captain there just because of the number of people. But we're probably a little light given the number of total employees we have. So yeah, we're definitely not heavy. If you look at other agencies, we're definitely not heavy in command staff.
Yeah.
Believe me, I hear that complaint from them fairly regularly.
Yes. Steve Sunday, does the jail have a ministry program?
The jail does have a ministry program. Yes, it does. And of course, we have a chaplaincy program for our community interaction as well as our staff.
Adam, thank you for your compliment. It's much appreciated. Lindsay and I very much appreciate that, especially the weeks we've had over the last couple of weeks. Shannon Ireland, what is the beach ambassador exactly? What do they do?
So that hasn't been fully roughed out yet, Shannon. But essentially, the board has come to us, or they've asked the county administrator, who I just met today, by the way. I'll talk about that in a second. But they've asked them to come to us and discuss what options are available to help manage and mitigate the settlement or our total beach issues down there in regard to that. So the Beach Ambassador program a few years ago that TDC had, I think, again, was a pretty good program. I kind of like that template. what it would be kind of educational, customer service based people that we're going to get really educated on what the rules are versus public versus private property and all its different manifestations up and down Walton County. It's literally going to be different in different places, but we're going to get those people super educated on it. For those, we made flag education, things like that, just customer service related, not just enforcement for those folks. We'll let the deputy come down and handle the enforcement. But if there is, hey, what's the rule? Is this private property? Can I do X, Y, or Z here? We would like them to be able to say, hey, look, here's what it is. And if they go, well, I don't like that, well, that's fine. We'll go get a deputy. We're not asking them to take that action. But I could even see those folks, everything assisting from up at the beach accesses with flags. Hey, this is the flag. Just let you know the flags have changed. Because sometimes the flags change during the middle of the day, right? So if it goes from red to, go from yellow to red, for instance, our beach ambassador maybe down there going, hey, look, guys just going up down the beach. Look, hey, flags are changing. We're losing a lot of people to drowning. And so I think anything we can do would be positive in that regard. Yeah. We haven't fully roughed it out because we haven't agreed to it yet, but I'm amenable to it because I think it gives a higher level of service.
Ollie Walker, can we offer considerable sign-on bonuses to help secure housing for new officers? Additionally, offer other annual bonuses for current. Frankly, after spring break and high season, all of you deserve a bonus.
Yeah, it's a great idea. We've actually tried a $5,000 bonus the governor authorized, and then we authorized $5,000 on top of it for a period of time. Believe it or not, it actually didn't move the needle as much as we thought it would. We're going to try it again. I don't know. Yes, I mean the short version is we're trying some different things. But one of the problems with that was Ollie, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the problems with that is if I give $5,000 to those folks, and then I got Deputy Corey and Deputy Lindsay going, whoa. What about my $5,000? I've been here. Why are you not? So there's always a little bit. That's always a tough thing too.
Yeah, because you want to reward people who've been here.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm not poo-pooing the suggestion because we've actually agreed with that. I think there's some options there, and we may very well do that again to try and solve this problem.
Marie Jacobs, hello. I don't know.
We probably will.
I don't know if you have answered this yet. Just jumping on. Can we get an update on the shooting on 331 South, the Defuniak shooting?
Yes. So there was an arrest made. One was, I think, an open count of murder. The second was ag battery or a deadly weapon.
Mm-hmm. But Defuniak.
In Defuniak Springs, the city will actually will now be working the case toward prosecution. Well, obviously, we assist in the capture of that individual in the scene. It was good partnership with all that. July 4th night. But yeah, that's where it's at. That subject is in the Walton County Jail now.
Victoria Lee, what traffic crashes, no matter the degree, are shared between WCSO and FDOT? Specifically, I have escalated directly to FDOT issues at Watersound Parkway and Highway 98. I acknowledge that Watersound Parkway is a private roadway owned by St. Joe. I guess I'm not sure what she's asking. I think traffic crashes are typically investigated by Florida Highway Patrol. Typically, in our county. Sometimes we do.
I worked to death there myself. I got out with, unfortunately, a young man who died on me while I was out there trying to work him, and that's been probably 6 months ago. So, I know that's a bad intersection. Mm-hmm. Pulling out slower traffic, making that turn. We have some issues there. You probably need just a little clarification on the question, then we can kind of talk about where to go from there.
Bob Good, does WCSO offer any paid part-time employment opportunities suitable for someone retired from another profession?
So, we're just talking about this opportunity for our beach ambassador. So we're really? Definitely looking at multiple ways to try and bite the apple.
But a CSO position or even officer, becoming a part of becoming.
Yeah, so we're trying to expand that to help until we can get deputies hired. And again, Sheriff Aiden and I we had kind of a long conversation with Sheriff Ford, and we're arguing amongst each other about how we're going to get these, get people to come to work, and we're in a position where we're trying not to steal each other's employees.
Yeah. But specifically to paid part-time, Bob, reach out to us.
Absolutely.
There's so many different things that the sheriff's offices does that I don't even think that people realize, quite frankly. Charlie Comer. Hi, Charlie. Charlie is a regular on our Instagram. It's nice to see you on Facebook. Have you seen The Sound of Freedom yet? If not, you need to go watch it.
I have not. I actually haven't seen it.
I've actually heard, somebody told me it's excellent.
Yeah, I have not seen a movie. I couldn't tell you when.
Yeah. Matthew Perkins. Residents of Liberty Fire District would like to know when someone will step in to make things right with Liberty Fire.
I guess the short version of that is, obviously you're probably aware at this point that some of the state officials are looking at that and trying to look into consideration about what's going on there. Our position is always this: we're going to do whatever we can to help and to keep the citizens safe, and we'll take whatever action is necessary to make sure that there's not a drop off in your services, there's not change, and to keep the people that have been dedicated to volunteering and doing that for years. There's a place for that. We just have to wait and see what the legislature is what their thought process is on those districts. But we are, just to be clear, we are monitoring that situation in Argyle and Liberty very closely, and we're making contingency plans as well too. And
we're at the end of the day, we want people to receive service in that area. Yeah. That's the
we have an obligation. We understand that. Yes. We'll make sure that we work. We want to work. If we can help make it better, we want to make it better. If the legislature fully steps in, then we'll figure out what that means too.
Yeah. To follow up about the Sound of Freedom movie, they're asking. Charlie would like to know what we've done about human trafficking in the area.
So one of the interesting things is we have someone here who is really a human trafficking expert that's worked to cover these cases for us, Lieutenant Kaliko Wheatley, and so I think she's a resource for us. We try to get out to the local communities and speak to groups about what to identify and what to look at. What you have to remember with human trafficking is we always think of people being foreign nationals, right? Or trafficking can happen in one night. Trafficking can happen regardless of distance or time. Mm-hmm. And so that's where most human trafficking happens. Most human trafficking is not being transported from a third world country. That happens, and we've had issues of people coming here with workforce visas and being held with those kind of situations. We made cases on that before. You won't see it typically charged human trafficking. You'll see the actual charge we can make. And in fact, we had a pretty prominent business owner here. We went after, I don't want to say the business because I don't know that he still owns it, so I don't want to hurt that business. But we tried to make a pretty extensive case on someone here recently over the last year or so. But yeah, we have people that we've looked at a couple of massage parlors that we've tried to step in and work with Homeland Security and some other folks. So yeah, we're definitely aware of it. We definitely try and stay on top of it. And it helps having a subject matter expert. That's actually a big deal. Mm-hmm. Because somebody can step in and answer the questions.
Yeah. Joseph Paul wants to know if we have training class for reserves in August.
Don't know the answer to that, JP, but I bet we can get one squared away for you.
Shelley Myers, speaking of July 4th, did anyone report that the homeowner that was involved in the fight at Dogwood was actually aiming fireworks at the crowd trying to come up the access to exit?
We have heard that as well. We've heard some different versions of it across the board. Yes. So there were some people that said that.
Wick Augustin. Hey, Sheriff, thank you for what you do. Hey, I miss working for you.
Yeah, you were great. I hope things are working well for you in South Florida. Good deputy sheriff. He was one of my last deputies. He was my last deputy that could speak Creole, right? French Creole. So
yeah. And then I've kind of caught up on asking the question. Bob Good wants to know if there's a specific person he should contact regarding a part-time position. Send us an email. Lindsay, you replied to him. Okay. She's already on it. Look at her.
It takes a village to keep me going.
Yeah, and then we're caught up.
And
wow.
Sport team.
I know and I apologize that it took so long. I appreciate you guys hanging in there. We've addressed a lot of stuff tonight. And we haven't talked about our two events coming up, so I just want to make sure, Tammy Godwin would have my behind if I didn't talk about Back to School Splash Bash on July 29th. That is our backpack giveaway, and we do that first come, first serve. This year it's in Freeport. Next year we may move it back to Defuniak. We're just trying to accommodate different areas of the county. And then we've got Cones, Cops, and Cruisers on August 9th.
Yeah. And you know what I love about Cones, Cops, and Cruisers July 9th, or in
August
9th is, that came, people always talk about community-oriented policing. That came from, Deputy Andrea Carnahan on her own, developing, putting this stuff together. That's big. That's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah, and I know Deputy Hatsity Sarapoka has offered to bring some of his exotic cars out there, and they're going to have a ton of food trucks.
Trying to get Hatsity to bring some of those food trucks out over here. You know, he's an entrepreneur. So.
Yeah.
But go to both to when you talk about the quality of your deputies, talk about Hatsity and Andrea. Both they're great examples of totally different backgrounds and deputies, but doing things, being engaged. Hat came to us after a career in the military, and it's just done an outstanding job being engaged. We get so many great compliments on him. And there's Andrea, completely different, but yet got that public service mindset, going out and doing stuff,
raising some kiddos,
we love that. I think that makes good deputies. I think that makes good deputy sheriffs across the board. So we're pleased. We've been on a long time. We've been almost 2 hours. I've answered your questions for 2 hours nonstop now.
Over 2 hours.
Over 2 hours. So don't ever say I dodged your questions, because Lord knows we're here. But we talked about basically one area of the agency, and really largely one area of the county tonight. We talked mostly about South Walton and mostly about patrol, right? But the truth is, the Walton County Sheriff's Office is a jail that does a phenomenal job. We have, again, one of only 10 in the state of Florida medically accredited fire rescue. Next place you're going to go medically accredited fire rescue is Orlando, Tampa area. Walton County Fire Rescue does that.
Yeah.
We've got a new air ambulance in service. Yeah. We're excited.
Walton
in partnership with Air Methods, a lot of stuff. We're animal control. And it is a busy time of year. Animal with the heat, we're worried about the safety and well-being of our animals. We were just talking to Captain Hogaboom about Large Animal Rescue Day and animal abuse investigations. We had a pretty big case. Aliqua Animal Refuge worked in another adjoining county where they took in a bunch of animals, and some of our folks went over to help. That's what this is about.
Yeah.
And so we are 911 emergency communications. Those folks took a beating July 4th.
Yeah.
I mean, they were working and they were hustling, and people forget the work that they do. Yeah. People forget the work the administrative staff does. They forget the work that you guys are doing. So, for me, I'll come out here and I'll answer a question for 2 hours. Some people love me, some people hate me, some people can't stand it, whatever it is, what it is. But I get to represent a lot of dedicated men and women that come in and put their nose to the grindstone. And I think sometimes when we're just super busy, everything starts sounding like an excuse, if you're not careful. But my job is to make sure that our people don't get forgotten, and that people know the kind of effort that they're putting in. And so I'm super proud to represent them. It's good stuff. There's a lot of good going on here.
Yeah. I need to ask Mike's question, because I honestly felt like, have you seen the movie A Man Called Otto with Tom Hanks yet?
I read a lot. I don't see a lot of movies.
It's so good. But to be fair, in the beginning of the movie, Tom Hanks is like that grumpy guy living in an HOA where he goes around and he's like
policing
everybody and like pointing out all the violations and fixing stuff. And this morning I went on a walk in the verandas, and I noticed that several people were blocking the sidewalk in my neighborhood, and I had to walk in the street. So Mike is asking, is there an ordinance regarding cars blocking sidewalks, tourists blocked by parking all over the driveways, causing people to walk in the street?
So just to be clear, they can't park your driveway. You can have that vehicle towed. You don't have to wait for a parking ticket. They're blocking your driveway on private property, you can have them towed, period.
Okay.
Call a tow truck and have them towed.
Cool.
But I will say, and I mentioned this.
What if they're in their driveway blocking the sidewalk?
Depends if it's a private or public sidewalk.
Dang it.
Right, so that's for y'all to work out in your homeowner association. I will say this. I just met the new county administrator today, Quinn Robertson, and had I thought, a very productive meeting. And we talked about parking. We talked about parking. We talked about low-speed vehicle. And I'm always amazed, because I spent my morning the other day, we did this kind of an example of, so you wonder what it's like being in the sheriff's office. We were having the rollout of Air Methods the other day, and some of you may not be aware, at the same time we were having what is essentially an armed standoff with a guy, a wanted fugitive. And we were actually to start to leave because we were...
The unveiling of the helicopter.
The helicopter, because we were anticipating, and unfortunately ended in a death, and that's the business we're in sometime. But I thought to myself, then later we came back and we did the unveiling of the helicopter, and then we were trying to decide where to put a bathroom later in the day, and then somebody called me and they were upset about their property line dispute, And then later in the afternoon, we were getting complaints heavily about low-speed vehicles. And that night, we were discussing. I went over, stayed late, and we were talking about, unfortunately, a child death that we're having to deal with. This is a crazy business. It's a crazy business. And so, even when we sit here and we spend 2 hours answering questions, again, some people are happy, some people are sad. Most people won't even see this at this point. They've dropped off by here. It's still a privilege to get to do this, though, and I think that's important for people to understand. We still know it's a privilege to be here. So
yeah, and I'm thankful to live here.
Yeah, amen. It's a great place to live.
A couple of Adam wants to know: is it a rumor? I heard that there's a rumor that there'll be a connector road behind Publix to Bay Loop in Freeport. If that's the case, I hope the rumors are true.
Yeah, I hope they are too.
That would relieve a ton of traffic. I don't know that, but I'm sure we could reach out to the city in Freeport and find out. Yeah. And then Julie Lewis says, if you need an amazing caterer, call Blake Van Zant. Nice. He would love to support and donate his experience and time for everything you do.
Awesome.
We appreciate you. Shelly Myers, a homeowner cannot have you towed from the county right of way unless you're blocking their driveway, correct? Correct.
So remember, if it's county right-of-way, it's not your yard, it's county right-of-way. And the county is allowing parking in right-of-way. And I think that's probably, I'm just here, I don't know how who's going to get mad. Maybe nobody left on this late, right? Mm-hmm. They need to put an end to that. They need to put an end in that.
Yeah.
And that's part of our, but you got to have places for people to park. So I don't know where that.
Yeah. Andrea Rockefeller says, thank you for making the time to do these Q&As. Andrea, I need to talk to you. So if you'll email me, we're trying to do something with our canine unit to say thank you to the folks who donated money to us. And I've tried to get a hold of some people and I can't. So Andrea, if you would shoot me an email, that would be awesome.
Speaking of
maybe
that,
you have some contacts over there.
Of that, we're going to do something roll out, but I want to say our friends over at Galleon Restaurant and Shunt Gullies, who donated $10,000, $5,000 each. Tommy Galleon and George Barnes and those folks over there, really supporting the sheriff's office charities. We're fixing to roll out our new charity arm, and those folks have always jumped out, and like so many businesses here in Walton County, trying to make a difference in their community. So we're going to do something formally for them, but man, we wanted to give them a little shout out as well.
Yeah, and Shelley says they're both delicious.
Better believe it. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So sign us off here, Sheriff. It's 7:45.
So we have enjoyed the last 2 hours and 15 minutes of answering everything from murder questions to beach ordinances to, what did we leave out? Animal issues, dogs. We tried. I don't guarantee that every answer was right. I guarantee that we'll get you a right answer if we don't know or if it wasn't right. Mm-hmm. All joking aside, follow up with any emails, any questions you have. We just try to do the best we can to give you a level of service. And we'll be back in a couple of weeks. We look forward to meeting with you. And if you need something, reach out to us.